Okay, so we're gonna get started. Today's webinar is actually, I think, probably if you were to attend any webinar that I've done over the past several years, I think that this would probably be one of the most important, if not actually the most important webinar you ever watch. And I'll tell you why. First of all, as I'll talk about in today's webinar, almost all of my successes, whether it was getting into schools, getting jobs, whatever, have been related to networking and the ability to do that effectively. It's more effective than job sites. It's more effective even than a lot of recruiting related work that I do as a recruiter for candidates. It really is something that can change the entire course of your career and your life. One other thing I just mentioned at the site at the outset, what I'm going to cover today, I coach partners in law firms about how to develop business, how to get new jobs and things that they want. And as part of that coaching, I mean, I charge tens of thousands of dollars, and I'm actually going to cover today what I teach them over the course of often several months. So you're going to learn a lot. You're going to get tens of thousands of dollars in value based on what I'm teaching because it really can change the entire course of your career and your life if you understand and you take notes about what I'm talking about today. So I'd encourage you to take notes. I'd encourage you to listen and hopefully not get distracted during this because a lot of very important information is going to be covered. And I'm going to teach you how you can use all of this to get positions, how you can use all of this to eventually get business, how you can move into far better firms than you may be at present. So you may have a dream of getting into like an Am Law 100 law firm. You may have a dream of making partner in your existing law firm or another law firm. And all of these things are actually possible once you learn about what I'm going to talk to you about today. And pretty much the majority of success that attorneys have in their careers is based on their ability to learn how to network with people, whether it's getting business, whether it's getting better jobs, and even in relationships. Relationships are often almost every relationship that I've entered into is a result of networking. Recruiters that I've hired from our company that have done well and grown the company have been the result of networking. When you learn how to network, you can drastically improve your reputation. You can have a long-term career practicing law in a law firm, or if you choose not to be in a law firm in another practice setting, you can really pretty much do anything in your career if you learn how to network effectively. And I will just flat out tell you at the outset, every every college, when I got into college, that was a result of networking. When I got into law school, that was a result of networking. When I've got into successful relationships, that's been the result of networking. When I've started my company and done well at it and expanded it, that was the result of networking. Getting numerous candidates jobs that they never should have gotten that were way above their experience level as a result of networking. I have done all sorts of incredible things because of networking in my life and career. And as a matter of fact, I mean, I would say the almost 80 to 90% of my success has come from my ability to network effectively. And it's the same thing with candidates, it's the same thing with partners. And if you learn all this, even today, I mean, in 1 to 2 years, your life and career may never be the same. People inside of law firms typically only become partners when they learn how to network. People that are partners inside of law firms only become effective and do well as a result of networking. So this is something that's extremely important. Again, it's more powerful than job sites. It's more powerful than most ways that people, think about getting jobs. It's more powerful than most ways that people think about developing businesses as an attorney. All of this stuff is just incredibly important. So I'm going to teach you today what I charge people tens of thousands of dollars to learn over the course of several months. I'm going to cover pretty much all the same information that I do there. At the end of this webinar, this is a live webinar, so I will be taking questions, which is often the most important part of the webinar. So I'd encourage you to stick around for those. Also, if you were on this webinar last week, I was in the position where I had to go up a flight. So I did save people's questions that they may have asked last week, and that I will also be answering those today. So almost the majority of people in the country that get jobs get them through networking. They don't get them through job sites. They don't get them through other methods. They get them through networking. And when you use networking to get a job, you're going to have far better chance of getting a position than if you're applying to just jobs on job sites, for example. You can find jobs by networking in new locations if you're not from there. But if you're not using networking to get a position, you're making a huge mistake. And if you're not in a position right now where you feel like you have the ability to use networking, then you need to learn how to do it. It doesn't help you to sit in an office and, which most attorneys do, and work extremely hard for a number of years. And then suddenly when you need a job, rely only on a recruiter or rely only on job sites to find a job. So many careers end, literally. I mean, partners in law firm and people make partner in law firm their careers because they don't know how to network, or they never become a partner in a law firm because they don't know how to network. They never develop business as an attorney and because they don't know how to network. And then they're always under the control of someone else. If you learn how to network, you're never going to be under someone's control. You will have the ability to find jobs, but then you will also learn how to get business. And once you have business, I want to give you a very quick understanding of why that's so important. The reason it's important to get business is because what law firms do, they don't exist to give people jobs. I mean, that's part of what they do, but they actually exist to support partners with business. They hire paralegals and legal secretaries, they get office space, they run payroll, they do all these things. They pay partners a certain percentage of the work that they're bringing in different methods. So you want to be in a position where a law firm is working for you and where you have your own business and your own career that you can do for 50 plus years if you graduate from law school at the age of 25. And what that means is if you learn all these tools, then you can have a long-term career. And this is what everyone does that has a long-term career practicing law. They learn how to network, and you certainly can put yourself in a position where you're always working for people and you have multiple jobs and things, but it's not what you really want. And it doesn't matter who you think you are. If you think you don't have good interpersonal skills, if you don't think that you think you're too much of a nerd or whatever, you just whatever person you think you are, anybody can get positions and develop business through networking. And just a quick story, because most people don't think that they have networking skills, but it was funny. When I was a young attorney, I was working at Quinn Emanuel Urquhart in Los Angeles, and Bill Urquhart once said they had a meeting where they were talking about how to develop business. And there were two people that spoke in the meeting, two partners. One was John Quinn and the other was Bill Urquhart. And Bill Urquhart said something I'll never forget. He said, one of the biggest nerds in Los Angeles also has the largest book of business, which was kind of funny. So it just shows you that whoever you think you are, you can get business. And then John Quinn said, one of the greatest mistakes he felt like he made in his career was when he was at Harvard Law School, he didn't network more effectively, didn't make friends, didn't stay in touch with people. And because of that, he felt that he could have been a lot more successful because those people became general counsels of companies and that sort of thing, and he didn't have a connection with them. So I thought that was interesting. And another quick point just about the power of networking. Bill Clinton, when he was very young, when he was a student at Georgetown for college, he started keeping these 3x5 index cards, and everybody he met, he would write down different things about them, their families, whatever he could, gauge from talking to them and just networking. He did the same thing in law school and at Yale. And then so he had all these index cards. And then when he got out of law school, he kept doing the same thing. And he would write down what he knew about these people, their families, whatever information he could get. And then he would always go and refer to those index cards continually, just reviewing them once a month or whatever. And he could meet someone like 20 years later and would be able to ask about their family and all these different things. And that ability to network, probably helped him become president of the United States. And it's a very interesting way to network and learn people, but that's what he did. So, there's different types of positions. So a defined position is one that exists and isn't going to be filled regardless of whether you network or not. So the positions that are advertised, they'll be posted on an employer's website, or they'll be filled in different ways. And you're always better off if there's a position that's defined, meaning the law firm or whatever the employer is has a position. You're always better off being able to network to get those positions than not network. When I was in, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second, but when I was younger in high school, I remember hearing the story. And at the time, it was just kind of this urban myth about an admissions offer at Stanford University. And he had a pile of highly qualified candidates that he needed to choose to who to offer admission to. And there were like 100 people, and he was tasked with selecting 20. And he sat in his office and like was reviewing all these people, and each person seemed to be pretty much a similar type of person. They might have been class president, top of their class, good SAT scores, and all of these things basically made them very, very similar. So there's really no difference between each of these 100 people that were kind of finalists to be admitted. They maybe one was captain or a really good athlete, the other, they were just very strong applicants all around. And so they had good essays, there were good reasons to admit each of them. And so we sat there reviewing all these people. And after a few hours, he just realized that these candidates were, each of them were really good. They were sort of indistinguishable. So he took all these applications or these files, and he chose 20, and he threw them down a staircase. And then he chose 20 who landed the closest to the bottom of the stairs. So he went to the bottom of the stairs and picked up 20, and those were the people that he admitted. And I remember hearing that story, and I didn't really think much of it at the time. But then 15 or so years later, I was at a conference that had nothing to do with college admissions or anything. And it was a discussion about users' experience on websites or something. And incredibly, there was an admissions officer or someone had been an admissions officer leading one of the presentations. I don't know why. And he actually brought up this story, and it had happened, I don't know, 15 years or 20 years ago at that point. But it was the same story. And he just said, with so many highly qualified candidates, there was no way to distinguish between them. And so they just left it to chance, and that's who he chose. And so I thought about that and recently because it reminded me of something I know is true. There were probably applicants as part of that pool that were not thrown down the stairs. They knew someone in the admissions office or the school, someone at the school went to bat for them and networked. And so if they had done that, they would have been admitted. Well, they would have been admitted before any of this happened. There was just no connection that the school had with any of them. So there was no reason to admit those people. I had another thing that was kind of interesting. I'll never forget this. So when I was at the University of Chicago for college, I was a very competitive student, did well, that sort of thing. And there was another woman, she and I were like Rhodes Scholar finalists, which is, I don't know what the thing, how it exists right now. We were Rhodes Scholar finalists and both applying to law schools. And she wanted to go to Stanford Law School. She also happened to be a teacher's assistant or something, had worked for a professor at the University of Chicago Law School for 2 years and had done a really good job and everything. She told him that she wanted to go to Stanford Law School. So this is a true story. I literally, it's hard to believe, but it's true. She sent an application to Stanford Law School like in October, okay, way before their admissions deadlines and that sort of thing. So she sent an application to Stanford Law School in October. She sent her application on like a Monday, meaning it probably took 3 days to get there. The school got it like on a Wednesday or Thursday. And then the following week, like on a Tuesday or something, I mean, literally within like 8 or 9 days, received an acceptance letter from the school. Like, think about that. That obviously she was working for a very well-known professor at the University of Chicago Law School, but think about that. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that can happen when you network effectively. I think it's like the #1 ranked law school in the country now. This is what happens. So in every area of your life, there's someone, that can let you into organizations and, can help you, if that person likes you. And they can network for you, but you're going to get much farther in your life and career if you know people. And if you want to achieve anything of significance, they're going to need to know someone. I mean, knowing people helps you get things done. This is what politicians do. Politicians go out and network. They need people that are supporting them. This is even what best-selling authors do. Like someone that wants to write a self-improvement book just doesn't write a self-improvement book. They go out and they network and they try to get on Oprah and do all these things to get people to promote them, and they network to do that. When I was just starting out in Los Angeles in my business, I worked in downtown Los Angeles, and people that, worked in downtown Los Angeles wanted to belong to different clubs. You could go there and exercise, you could have, business meetings, you could do whatever. And at the time, there were three clubs that most people belonged to. One was like the Los Angeles Athletic Club. This is before Equinox and places like that, LA Fitness. But there was Los Angeles Athletic Club, then there was the Jonathan Club, and then there was the California Club. And each club, was nice. They had places to eat, saunas and hotels inside of them. And the three different kind of clubs. So the first one is the Los Angeles Athletic Club. And at the time, you could walking off the street and join. The initiation fee wasn't that much. It might be $500, maybe it was a couple $1,000. And it was right across the street from my office. So I joined that. And then the Jonathan Club and California Club were different types of clubs. So there's a saying in Los Angeles that the people that run Los Angeles belong to the Jonathan Club, and then the people who own Los Angeles belong to the California Club. So California Club, they have people like Charlie Munger and very, powerful people that belong to that club. And so when I was practicing law, there was a partner in my law firm that was a very high-ranking partner, like, made millions of dollars a year back then. And he belonged to the California Club. And I went there and it was, a lot of older, stuffier people. And then during my work, I kept meeting people who were in Los Angeles whose parents had belonged to the Jonathan Club and now they belong there. So the Jonathan Club is kind of not as prestigious, but it's a different type of club. And so I was impressed with the people I was meeting. They seemed to run good businesses, and I wanted to see, what this club is about. And when I remember telling them I belonged to this Los Angeles Athletic Club, they just didn't really say anything. So there are, different sorts of people, different types of caliber of people. And, I worked back then, my first office was in a building where there were people manufacturing jewelry and they were from foreign countries, and they belonged to the Los Angeles Athletic Club. So, in contrast, people that belonged to the Jonathan Club were very well dressed people. Most of them had good educational qualifications. They were running companies and networked in Los Angeles. Their parents, they didn't work with their hands. One day I remember I walked into this club with another attorney I knew and just wanted to look around. And then a few minutes into that, as we stood there, I was looking at the lobby, and this lobby is just amazing. Very nice place. A security guard showed up, and then followed by a very well dressed woman who gave me an angry look and informed us we didn't belong. We weren't dressed to be in the lobby, to wear like a coat and tie and sort of big suit coat. And, I was embarrassed, and I told myself that I was going to learn how to get into this club. So you needed to have three people recommend you. You need to know these people well. They have to have gone over to your house. You're required to have all these interviews back then to get in. I don't know if it's still the same. The initiation fee for this club, I think now it's like maybe $80,000, but back then it might have been like 30 or 40,000. But the main thing I remember is that you needed to, if you wanted to get into this club and be part of this little thing, you needed to network and know people there. So you needed to have people vouch for you in order to be part of it. So I was kind of scared and mad that I got, kicked out of this club when I walked in the lobby. And I spent the next 3 years trying to meet people and networking that would sponsor me to be part of this club. I wasn't from Los Angeles. It wasn't, easy to do, but I, networked and I had to meet people. And then, when I finally got to the interviews after 3 years, the people that were interviewing me, that were older members of the club, were concerned I didn't know people at the club well enough. And that was a surprise to me because I thought I knew three people. So the people I did get to know subsequently, also gave me, referred business opportunities and things to me that I wouldn't have known but for these people. So employers, clubs, and organizations are often closed off to people unless you know someone. So I did end up getting in this club, but I had to network, I had to meet people, then I had to make them my friends and things, and then have them over to my house and do all these things to eventually become a member. So years ago, there's another organization I wanted to join. It was called TED, and TED is technology, entertainment, and design. It's a very, you've probably seen TED Talks and things. And I kept applying for this to be part of it. I There's like 3,000 members. I'm certainly not someone that runs Google or something, the kind of people that are part of there, but I kept applying for a few years and got rejected. And then one year I was invited to, after applying to like an event where they were simulcasting it or something in Aspen. I met a woman there who was one of the membership directors of the main organization. We had, I had drinks with her, and I asked her why I couldn't get into the real one, where I think there might have been only 1,000 people there, but it was like Mark Zuckerberg, Al Gore, Bill Gates, and those sort of people. And she told me that, that no one knew me, and unless I was like a household name like Bill Gates, I needed to meet more people. And she started introducing me to people, and then started asking me if I was making donations to all these different organizations. Like, was I someone that was going out and making millions of dollars in donations? She said that was important. And so I realized at that point that this is not something that was probably I could ever do. And if I wanted to do that, I would have to network and meet a lot of people around the country and maybe stand a chance of getting in there, maybe not. But I was, concluded this isn't something that I would ever be able to do. So, whether it's a club or a college or anything, you're trying to do, knowing people is extremely important. I met that woman that could have led to something, but it didn't. So if you're applying to even college or law school based on your numbers, you may get in if your numbers qualify you to do so, or you may not. But if you know someone, everything changes. Like, if you know people that can vouch for you inside of any organization, like a college or something like that, you're going to have an advantage. Just like I told you about the woman that got into Stanford Law School, which is next to impossible. So it's all about these connections and who knows you. And if you're connected, then you're going to get things done. Things are going to happen that wouldn't happen normally to you if you didn't have those sorts of connections. And it's the same thing with searching for a legal job. But employers, like any employer, law firm, most of them, if they have openings, especially like the largest firms in the country, they get a lot of applicants. They get applicants that often are indistinguishable. They're coming from other AmLaw 100 law firms, or they have similar law schools, and so you may be applying to a firm and not getting interviews, even if you have the best qualifications. And a lot of people that are able to get those interviews and so forth often have done things to network and be known by people in the firm prior to that. Early in my legal career, I went out of my way to meet almost every single candidate I could. So if the person was in Los Angeles, I made sure that I met them. If they were from another city, I would often fly to other cities. Even if I was just there for half a day, I'd go to San Francisco, or maybe I would go to Houston for a couple of days. And I knew that if I met a person, I would almost always get them a job. But if I didn't, I often wouldn't. And it was if having met them just made everything different. And when I met something, I would be able to call the law firm to which I was marketing the person. I would be able to write long letters about how I met them, and these were my impressions. I would be able to describe their personality. I would be able to tell the firms how they fit in with the culture of the firm, what I liked about the person, how they dressed, how they carried themselves, and any other personal information I might have about the person. And law firms like that. They liked hearing that sort of information. And I would also be able to network with people inside the law firms. When I meet law firms, the same thing happens. They will prioritize my candidates. People will get jobs that they normally wouldn't because of the connection. People will get interviews they normally wouldn't. Law firms will favor my candidates over other recruiters' candidates and interview and hire people. They will ignore, even to the extent they'll ignore other recruiters. They'll ignore people applying on their own. I had one thing very interesting happen when I was a fairly young recruiter. I was maybe 3 or 4 years. I was starting, and there was a woman in Los Angeles that had opened up a office of an AmLaw 100 law firm. She was in a recruiting capacity, and she was literally like just a couple office buildings down. So I had gone and met with her a couple of times, and some recruiters from our company had met with her. In very quick succession, she hired three of my candidates. And what was interesting about those three hires was that two of those candidates had actually, prior to me, sent their applications to the firm on their own. And when they sent those applications, the firm didn't even respond. So the firm had a record of having received them, and they received them like a month or two before I sent them. But the woman, instead, because she was like me, she ignored she hadn't responded to those applications before, but she ended up hiring two of those people before me that had sent their applications on their own, meaning she was paying me two placement fees that were probably, 50 to 80,000. I don't remember what they were for both of them. No, probably 80 to 90,000 that she didn't have to pay because the candidates had applied on their own a month before. But she did that just because of networking. So think about it. She's literally put like $80,000 in the company because of that connection. And so when I meet candidates and I can describe them in detail, people like that. I try to, find things about them. I would try to talk to the firms, and there was a connection that would translate into dealing with the firms. So I do the same thing with the firms. So when I talk to law firms in my business, what I don't just talk to them and say, "Hey, let's schedule this interview," and that sort of thing. I talk to them and I literally will answer the phone and they'll be calling about a candidate. I'll ask them what they're doing. Literally, I may literally start describing what I did the previous weekend, just talking and bantering, and then asking them what they're doing, and just taking the conversation out of a transactional nature into something personal. And when I do that, like, people like me, they see me as a person, I'm vulnerable. And I start networking. So that connection translates into placements and makes this company work. And meeting with a candidate, again, was so important that I started going all over the country meeting people. I would fly to different cities. I'd fly to like Miami from Los Angeles to meet people. And then when I would talk to the firms about the candidates, they would most often they would get interviews and jobs, whereas they wouldn't prior to that. So what does that mean? That means that I would use networking essentially, like I would network with a person, and then I would use that networking to provide like a very powerful overview of someone on the phone, in letters, and in a way that shows, that network that made the people human, just like the Stanford girl that got into Stanford. There was networking behind that. So I would do that and people would get interviews and jobs. And then I started to realize too that, if I met with the law firms, like I said, I was able to make more placements, and I was able to, get far more placements and get far more people jobs than would happen, than happened without that. And it's very important. So being able to communicate that I met a person, that I vouched for them, that there was something, it was a person that was talking about them in a way that was very personal, meant something. And it does mean something. If I just send a resume to a law firm that I don't have a connection with, that's a very effective thing to do. Most recruiters will just send a resume without a lot of information. But if I have connected with the person's and the law firm, they're more likely to get jobs. Now, law firms will hire in response to business needs. So that doesn't mean that every time I represent a candidate, I need to speak with them. I need to have a relationship with a firm, because law firms, if they have a business need, will hire people. But this connection, means a lot. Law firms want connection. Everybody wants connection. I mean, you want connection. You want connection with your significant other. You want connection with friends. Everybody needs connection. And when people stop having connection, they get depressed, and they feel like they're just kind of out there in the middle of nowhere. I have a tenant in one of my properties, and he basically, it's kind of funny. He goes out almost every single night. He'll go out to a bar and sit there. He won't get drunk or anything, and he'll talk to people. He'll talk to women. He'll talk to the bartender. And he says that, if he doesn't do that, then he gets depressed and crazy. And so he's always out there trying to make connections. And so with placements and job hunting, in your personal life, this connection is something that everyone needs. Everyone needs connection. I mean, people, whatever. I mean, everybody's trying that tries to get connection is much happier, and everybody that has these connections does much better in their careers. So when I applied to both college and law school, I decided pretty early on the schools I wanted to attend. So I wanted to go to the University of Chicago for college, and I chose that as my first choice. And I wanted to go to University of Virginia for law school. I chose that as my first choice. And I didn't just apply to those schools. I actually found out who the admissions person was, and I met with them, and they remembered me. And I talked about myself. I sent them personalized letters. I told them, even sent them brochure. In law school, I sent brochures about my asphalt business to make myself personal. I wrote and connected with them throughout the admission cycle, and it worked. And I became more than just a number. When I applied to University of Virginia Law School, I wrote the admissions officer, in addition to my application, like a 10-page letter. Who does that? But that's what I did because after meeting them, they didn't invite me to meet them. I showed up at the school and met them. And I did the same thing in college. I showed up at the school and met them. Even my daughter, who goes to University of Chicago right now, I met the admissions officer 6 or 7 years ago and talked to him. And then I met him again, after my daughter had gotten in, but he remembered me because I networked. I'm not saying that I got her into that school, but having that network may have helped her in a way because they remembered who I was and someone that was actively involved in alumni things and other things, but doing that formed a connection with the school. So I got involved with admissions at the school a long time ago. And then I got involved in committees and things for reunions. And so helping my daughter with a connection, hopefully, becoming more than just a number. And so when I went to University of Virginia, there was a very low acceptance rate because most of the students, there might have been 300 people in the class, and then there was maybe 75 openings for people from out of state because it's state school. So I don't remember what it was. It was 7% or 5% or something to get in there if you were an out of state applicant. So there was an admissions event in Chicago where all the law schools showed up. I went there when I was a sophomore and I met the admissions director. Then I went there again as a junior, met him. I called him a few times when I was still in school, asking him about classes, telling him, would it hurt me if I did pass fail in a class and things. And I did that and to network very early. I did that the same thing for college. And so I flew to Chicago or actually I drove from Detroit, and I met the admissions person. I stopped by, the admissions officer again and told him I'd gone to a few classes and I liked it. I mean, I just went out of my way, wrote a letter to the admissions director. And even though back then my numbers were lower than, for University of Virginia, the people that are getting out of state, I mean, out of state, it was like, 174 in your LSATs and all these sorts of things, which I didn't have. It worked, and I ended up getting in. So same thing with college, like I talked about, wrote about attending classes and my experience and why I liked the school compared to other schools. I did that for both college and law school. And these are unusual methods. Like you may not think that you didn't do this for college or law school, but had I not gone to those colleges and law schools, I probably wouldn't have been able to get into the same quality of firms. And so I never take, same law school type of law school or same college maybe, but I've never taken network for granted. I mean, you need to do it. You need to get people's attention. You need to be seen because otherwise you're just a number. And until you do this, it's going to be more difficult for you to get into any ultra competitive organization. My first job, so it's very important to get a position as a summer associate in a law firm when you're in law school. So I went to a good law school, and there were a ton of good firms that came there, and I got interviews with a lot of them. And I mean, a lot of interviews. I probably had 30 or something on campus interviews, but I wasn't good at them. I wasn't good at them because I would go in and I would talk about all these intellectual papers and things I'd written in law school or college. I would talk about my asphalt business. I was too egocentric, just all sorts of problems with the way I was interviewing, things that I teach people not to do now. But the firm I did end up getting an offer for after, bombing callbacks, after bombing first interviews, The firm I got an offer for was there was a guy that came in and interviewed. He'd gone to Fordham Law School and or Fordham for college or something, and he knew because of the city I was in. He asked me if I knew this person, this woman, and the woman actually was my best friend's mother. And so all of a sudden, I made this connection with him. My best friend's mother talked to him about me and said how great I was and everything. This is from high school. And I ended up getting a job with that firm. I would not have gotten a job with as good of a firm had there wasn't for that networking. It may have saved my career because I don't know, had I not gotten a job at a good law firm in my second year, I probably wouldn't have gotten a federal clerkship. I probably wouldn't have gotten into the quality of firm I got into. And that happened all because of networking. So it made up for all of my horrible interview skills. And I mean, I was bad. I mean, I don't even know what to tell you. I mean, not a good interviewer. So, unless you do that sort of things, I mean, it saved my career. When I was in my early 30s, I decided I wanted to go to Stanford Business School. And back then, I don't know what it is now, it had like a 3% admissions rate. And they didn't want to admit people that were, had, I don't know, 10 years out of college and stuff. They did that. So I did the same thing. I went to the admissions office and met people. And one of the people I met that was on the admissions office, her father or something was a partner in a major law firm that knew me and I knew him. And all of a sudden, we were talking about him, and so he knew who I was. And he knew about my business, and so all of a sudden, I got after even before they were sending out admissions letters, the woman called me and said that if I wanted to, I could go there, and it's just that's incredible. So just I probably didn't have the work experience. I don't think I had, for some reason I did really well in the GMATs, but nowhere near like, with what their qualifications were. So got into Stanford Business School the same way. So when I didn't end up going there because I was like, I can't run my business and do the same thing. But my point is that all of these things, college admissions, jobs, all happen, when I network. So think about that. Like all of these successes that I personally had I was able to get seen where these 100 applications to Stanford College weren't seen because there was no network. Same thing with my daughter getting into that school. I mean, she was qualified to go there. She had every right to go there, but it's the same thing. It's like a 5% acceptance rate at the University of Chicago. I think this year it was 4. So being able to be seen by people. This is what happens with schools, law firms, and other organizations. The TED, the Jonathan Club, these clubs, everything happens when you network. And even if you have exceptional qualifications, you're going to get more jobs with networking. And if you want to get somewhere and you're competing with lots of people with better qualifications, people are going to hire people that there's some sort of connection with. They like that connection. They want to have that connection. Organizations want that connection. It's much easier to admit people and to do things for people when there's that connection. People are essentially tribal animals. So I don't know what the number is, but it used to be something like you would have these groups of humans, this is prior to farms and organized cities. You'd have these groups of people, and it would be like, I don't know what it was, but like 80 people, 120. There was some number that it was always out because if there was more people like that than that, or that it wouldn't work, or fewer, I don't know, but that was kind of the number. But the idea is that these groups of people were very, very close, and obviously anybody from outside was a threat. And so if somebody wanted to join or be part of their group, people were very, very suspicious of them, and wouldn't, they wouldn't want people that were cast out of other groups or want to get in their group, be part of their group. And so there's always been like this, suspicion of people that are coming from the outside. But when there's some sort of, trust that's established with a network, then things happen that wouldn't normally happen. So, look at the positions you've got. I mean, are they through networking? Because if if you're networked in there, you're going to come in with a better reputation. If the person doesn't treat you right, then that could get back to the person that, that gave you the job or helped you. And so you might actually be in a much better off. And if you want something, and people know you, you're going to be just much better off. And so if you know what you want, like if you want to work in a certain law firm or you want to do something or whatever, you need to find people that are going to help you get it, and you need to seek out personal connection and use these connections. Every attorney that gets business, they don't just sit there and get a call from someone who wants to hire them. I mean, some of them do in immigration or family law, or whatever, but in most cases, attorneys who develop large books of business have developed those by developing personal connections with people, and then those connections help them in the long run. And so, if you do meet people, you need to decide, what is it? Are those people going to help you achieve the things you want? Because the more you connect and the more relationships you build, the better off you will be. What I've taught you so far, I hope you understand, is that almost every success that I've had, whether it's in business, whether it's getting to in law schools or business schools, is all due to connections. It's not due because there's something incredible about my test taking abilities or whatever. It's all about connection. My daughter getting to the University of Chicago, I mean, that helps. So the more connections you have, the better off you're going to be. So when I was in college, I was considering transferring to Harvard University. My father had gone there, and I started feeling that maybe that would be a better school to have on my resume. And there were two kids in my class who transferred that I'd known, and then after they transferred, they came back to the University of Chicago because they knew people and stuff. So they came, I don't know, during the time when it was their break and there wasn't then people were in class at University of Chicago, and I found out who they were because other friends knew them and so forth. And I decided to seek them out and talk to them and tell them that I wanted to go there, that my father had gone there, that one of them was a Crocodillos, which was like a singing group, and one of them was there, and so my dad was part of there, and then there was another one that was part of the Hasty Pudding Club, so my dad was part of that. And so I sought these people out. I spent a weekend socializing with them, and then one of the people that had gone there was actually friends with the person who was the admissions officer for admitting transfer applicants. And he knew this person through his brother or something. I think his brother had dated her. And this is how he ended up deciding to go there and getting in. And so I explained to him these reasons why I wanted to transfer. And then he said he would arrange a call with the admissions woman if I had any questions, and would put in a good word for me. And a few days after this weekend, so he might have left on a Sunday night or something, I got a call from a woman in the admissions office, and she literally asked me if I had any questions. She said she was looking forward to getting my application. And this is not normal. It's not normal to get a call from an admissions officer, saying that they're looking forward to getting your application. I was shocked because I wasn't even sure I was going to apply. I didn't end up doing that, but I probably maybe would have worked out of 1,000 applicants or 2,000 transfer applicants. Maybe they bring in 5 or 10. I don't know, but that was really enlightening. You can network into anywhere, and it's an incredible way to get a job also. So if you're applying to a job that also exists, if there's some sort of connection, maybe the recruiter makes a connection, but maybe you make a connection. Like I made connections to get my candidates jobs. You're going to be far better off if you use those connections to get a position than not. And people have all these built-in mechanisms that require connection, and people do not trust other people that come from the outside. And if someone comes to you without some sort of recommendation or built-in, you have built-in defense mechanism. If you're hiring a nanny or someone to work for you, or in your house to take care of your children, if there's a connection from maybe another person that you know who also hired that nanny and had a good experience with them, you're going to be more likely to hire that nanny than just regular people applying in response to a job listing. So as a species, we've always been trying to distinguish between people who are threats and not threats, people that we're comfortable with and know people, and people that don't. And if someone comes to us recommended by others, that's not recommended by others, we're less likely to trust them because there could be problems with their performance or work ethic and more. So if a law firm is hiring someone and someone's just sending them an application, they're a little like they're looking at that person, but they don't know if that person does good work or not. They don't know if that person has issues and their personality problems or bad work ethic or whatever. They don't know that. But if someone comes to them that says, "Hey, this person is, this is how this person is, and they're someone that's trustworthy," that's helpful. And law firms and legal employers, they don't, most of them don't ask for references and check them. Most of them just hire people, but the ones that do, they're doing that because they're trying to figure out if someone's a good attorney or not. And it doesn't matter where you go to law school. People come into firms and a lot of them just have personality problems, or they may have bad work ethics, and they may bounce around between firms. And so law firms, just like any organization, want to distinguish between who's good and bad. There's no official rating agency for attorneys. Some attorneys will not work hard and say they do. Some will cut corners. Some will lie. Attorneys that are partners will often lie about their business. Some will rush through their work. Some will talk badly about every employer. Some will always get into an employer and think negative things about the employer and associate with other people that have negative opinions. There are all these things that law firms can't necessarily distinguish when they're getting an application because they don't know. I mean, how would they know? But if someone comes in and has a really good recommendation then from someone, or someone refers you, that can help you. By the way, if you're worried about maybe you did a bad job at a firm, maybe you got fired, maybe you've had bad experiences where you haven't done well in the past, most attorneys, and it's kind of an unwritten rule, and I just want you to be aware of this. If you've been out of law school for a while, you're just getting out, law, law, lawyers often will not speak negatively about other attorneys. Now, this at the highest levels of the legal profession, that's like just it's almost, it just doesn't happen hardly ever. And as you get lower and you may be working in different types of firms that aren't as prestigious, or attorneys that aren't as good, maybe they will not say good things about you. But good law firms typically will not say anything bad about an attorney. I had a woman that had worked at a really good firm. I think it was Simpson Thatcher. She'd been there for 6 months and had like some sort of like mental breakdown where she had some sort of manic episode at the firm, and then had been gone for 3 or 4 weeks and was hospitalized and all these things. And this is what she told me. She told me that she'd just done work there because of this and had all these problems. And so I called up the firm just to check her references and see what was going on. And she gave me two partners' names that she'd worked with, and both of them could not have said nicer things about her. They were just very complimentary and said, these are the things we liked about her. They didn't say anything negative about her. So, and that's a very classy firm. That's how good lawyers treat even lawyers that are having problems. But so for a lot of firms, checking references can be a waste of time, and they don't really know who they are until they get there. So if you are, applying for jobs and trying to do something, if you know someone, that can often help you. Now, I'm sorry to bring this up. It's kind of a tangent, but if you have like associates in a firm and you're an associate recommending you, that often is not that helpful sometimes because the associate may not be doing good work. You don't know how the associate's viewed, and you're kind of taking your chances. So, and it's actually almost like probably neutral. Like if you ask an associate or someone to put your resume in front of someone else, it's often kind of neutral. Like it may help you, it may not, but you don't know how that person's viewed. But if it's coming from like a partner or someone that has a lot of is well known in the legal community, or so a partner at your firm, or a partner that there, so that can help a lot more. So there's also the idea of getting positions in markets that may not actually have jobs. And it's very interesting in BCG. And this is something I want you to understand, and it's very important. 85%, I think, is the number of jobs we get for candidates, placements we make are with firms that don't have positions. So candidates come to BCG and we basically do two things. We say, hey, we're happy to just send you positions and you can go into your account and approve them if you want, or Or you can put a lot of firms into your account that may not have jobs and you can approve the ones you want. Or better yet, just let BCG do your job search and we will send you to firms that we think could be good fits, even if they don't have openings. And we will choose the firms for you and market you to firms that are at the same prestige levels where you're at or better, and let us help you that way. And that's how 85% of our candidates get jobs. So we're actually sending applications, we're a placement firm to firms that don't have openings. And why does that work? Well, law firms are businesses. So if you're a law firm and someone appears and you have, say, you're doing commercial litigation and if you hire another person, that you can give that person 2,000 hours of work per year, and maybe that person's billing out at $500 an hour, but you don't actually have an opening. You know that if that person works 2,000 hours a year, they're going to bring in $1 million because work may not be getting done. So they will look at you and they will say, hey, this is a good opportunity for us. And we have the work and we'll hire the person. So this, again, is the majority of the placements. Like, I just want you to understand this, and it's very, very important. If we're sending candidates to places where there's jobs, we may have an exclusive job, and we have a lot of exclusive jobs. And these are law firms that are giving us jobs, and they're saying, we can't find these people in the market. You go out and help us find them. So we make a lot of placements like that. And then we also make placements to firms that are saying hey to a bunch of recruiters to submit applications. But when we do that, those applications are competing with lots of other applications. And so it's much harder for a candidate to get a job. But if we send people to law firms that don't have a job advertised, they don't even have a job. This is how almost all of our placements happen. So if you want to improve your odds of getting a job, you do not just apply to job openings. This is just like insane. You apply to every firm that you possibly can that you potentially could potentially work at. So early in my career, maybe right after September 11th, I started a business called Legal Authority. And what this business does or did was it mails out letters to companies, law firms, and any type of employer in the legal market that may not have advertised position. If someone says, I want to do entertainment law, we would find all the entertainment law firms or firms that have that practice in Los Angeles and send people to those firms. And incredible. It didn't matter who the person was. Like, they could have gone to a 4th-tier law school and not done well. But people that use the service would and used it extensively, meaning they would apply to all the firms we recommended, would get jobs even after they've been trying unsuccessfully to find jobs through other means, because they'd merely been applying to unadvertised job openings. I'll tell you a very funny story just real quickly about how incredibly effective this method of getting jobs is. And Legal Authority, by the way, we don't run the business anymore. It just it wasn't profitable. I did it for maybe 10 years. I don't know, but it was interesting, just to give you just a little bit of an aside of how effective this way of getting a job was. It was like in maybe June or something, and this father showed up with his son and his son's friend that had graduated from Thomas Cooley Law School, which is not back then, it may be called Eastern Michigan or something now, but back then, Thomas Cooley was not a good law school. It was one of the lowest ranked in the country, one of the lowest bar passage rates, all these sorts of things. And the most competitive jobs to get in Los Angeles are entertainment jobs. Everybody wants to do entertainment. They think they're going to work with stars and all this sort of stuff. And because it's so freaking competitive, it's very, very difficult for recruiters to make placements. It's almost like the firms, most of them anyway, that's very, very difficult. And for people to get these jobs, they often go to Ivy League schools and stuff. Anyway, so this guy shows up with this father, with his son, 2 people. And incredibly, both of these guys had used this Legal Authority business and had gotten entertainment jobs in Los Angeles just by applying to the 100 firms or whatever, 200 that did it. And it's just crazy to me. Like, it just makes no sense. Like, horrible law schools, very competitive market. They got these jobs, and the father was thankful, the kids were thankful, and it was like amazing. And then I had a friend of mine who had lost his position, and he worked at a big firm, I think Mayer Brown. He was, or it was Morgan Lewis. He was maybe 8 years out of law school, and he went into this company as in-house counsel, and The company was doing these kind of things that were suspect, like not quite legal or on the edge. And so he didn't like that and they fired him. And so he'd been sitting there for months using job sites, legal recruiters, and all this stuff trying to find a job. But he only lasted like 3 months at this firm. And back then there were no corporate jobs because it was, the market was just horrible for corporate attorneys. And so the same thing, I told him to do this mass mailing with legal authority. And within a week or so, he had like 10 interviews with companies, law firms, and all this sort of stuff. He got a position in a major law firm that didn't have an opening. They needed someone exactly like him. And he is a partner in another law firm to this day. And he kept doing what he was doing, I don't think he would have found a position for a while. So a law firm will hire you if they have the work to do and they can bring money from you. It's the same thing with a company. You apply to a company without an opening, you find the right person, and they think we can save money by hiring this person. We don't need to hire outside attorneys. They will hire you. So if you want to work somewhere, if you find an employer that has a business need to hire you, then that'll work. So I once knew an attorney who wanted to work in the law firm where I was working, Quinn Emanuel. And this guy had been working for a third grade, like an insurance defense firm and he'd gone to, I think, Loyola Law School in Los Angeles and was trying to get a job at Quinn Emanuel. And back then, Quinn Emanuel was a much smaller firm. It was like 45 attorneys, probably one third of them had been associates at Cravath. Everyone had gone to like the very best law schools. Like when I was hired, I'd gone to University of Virginia, I'd done well there in clerkship and law review and everything. But at the same time, that was not like one of the kind of law schools people were coming from. They were coming from Harvard, like we're in the top five students in their class, and Yale and Stanford and all this stuff. And so this guy had been out for, over 10 years. He didn't have anything in his background that would make him qualified to work at this law firm. He was someone that you would think would never get a job there. And he did a trial against a partner from that law firm. And he wanted, when he got into that trial, a dream of his had been to work at a really good firm like that. And he went into this trial and he did an incredible job in the trial and won. And he also networked with the attorney he faced. They went out to lunch together and they had informal conversations. He expressed a little bit of dissatisfaction working in this insurance defense firm. And without even asking it, because he'd done such a great job networking with this guy, he got a position in this law firm. And, he just did a really good job networking. No opening at the firm, no way that law firm would ever, you could think, hire someone like that. But he networked and he got close to this guy. He did a good job and he got hired. I've hired many people to work for me, even attorneys, that when I didn't even have a need. And one of them was very interesting. There was a rabbi, my ex-wife Jewish, and so we rabbis and things. And I took a class with him about Judaism, like a 6-month class. And he recommended a young attorney. And this guy had graduated from from Berkeley Law School when he was 19. He was so smart, he got into Harvard and all these schools, but he wanted to live in California. I was the youngest graduate in history. The rabbi asked me if I would meet with him, give him some career advice. And so I liked this rabbi. I'd known the rabbi for a long time. And I decided to hire this 19-year-old kid who was extremely smart. It's absolutely incredible, like how he would, anyway. But I hired him, to work for me for $10,000 a month. And this guy had just been trying to interview on campus and things and never gotten a job. And so got his legal career started. So when you know people and you make them aware that you need something, like this rabbi helped this guy, it got him a job. That it was all because of networking. And had he not networked with me and so forth, he probably wouldn't have gotten a job. Years ago, there was a recruiter that worked in my company. He noticed I didn't have an in-house attorney. He'd asked me if I'd be willing to speak with a friend of his about working for me. I told him, I would. Actually, it was her. I'm sorry. I told her I would, and because he was a friend of hers and became highly recommended, I hired him. And actually ends up being kind of a bad story. The guy was alcoholic and wasn't drinking for the most time when he was with me, but then he relapsed and just went off the rails. And actually, after I let him go, he was accused of attempted murder and just all stuff in the paper. But I mean, this guy was just off the, crazy. And she knew that. But I hired him because of the recommendation. So almost all the recruiters that I've had working in the company come through recommendations of other recruiters. A substantial number of employees in the company have also come through recommendations of other people. The attorneys I've hired, accountants, outside attorneys, vendors, people have all come through recommendations. And so these are all network people that have networked. You can do the same thing. You can network into positions. Employers will hire when there's a business need. You could do all these things when you network. And I've hired for people, like I said, for jobs that don't exist. 2 attorneys where there were no jobs. And so, I've often hired the wrong person and with that, but people network. So it's the same thing with law firms. If a law firm believes they can hire you, even if there's no position, it will take recommendations of other people very seriously. And you don't need an opening. You can literally work in most places if you network effectively. When I was in college, I read this book called Unlimited Power by Anthony Robbins, who you may be too young, may not know who he is, but he's a very famous self-improvement author and speaker. I thought it was very inspirational. I dreamed of meeting him and even perhaps working with him, which just sounds absolutely crazy because the guy's, the coach of Bill Clinton and all these things, very powerful guy. And then a few years after that, I bought some tapes by him with goal setting and things. Back then, there were tapes and not CDs. I was inspired literally by him to give me the self-confidence to quit the practice of law and start my business and all these sorts of things, setting goals for my income. And I did that, and based on listening to him, and all this stuff happens. So about 5 years into being a legal recruiter and starting this business, I was at a seminar, and there was a speaker named Chet Holmes that talked about the fact that he knew Robbins. And I knew that if I ever wanted to meet Robbins, this was going to be my chance. So after this guy finished his presentation, I approached him. I introduced myself. He was well known and formerly worked with Charlie Munger and had a very successful career. And I learned everything I could about him. I purchased a course by him. Then after doing that, I contacted him and asked him if he would be interested in doing some consulting work for my business. I hired him and spent a day with him. I had dinner with him. He used to come out to Los Angeles. I invited him to my house on a couple of occasions and got to know he and his family very well. He even wrote a #1 best-selling book called The Ultimate Sales Machine. I read it and then early draft versions of it. I gave him all sorts of feedback, became his fan. And as he became more and more well known, and his book kind of shot up to the bestseller list, it became like the #1 business book for months. Anthony Robbins was attracted to him. Chet had cold called trying to speak with Anthony Robbins like every week for 10 years or something, and Anthony Robbins never returned his call. But after so that's Chet trying to network. After he got this book, then he got Anthony Robbins' attention, and I told Chet I wanted to meet Anthony Robbins. And when I met to him, I explained, I don't know how I got this meeting, but he got a meeting with him. And I explained to him they changed my life, how much I'd like to work with them in the future. I had several businesses and that I could work with him in, and I created this presentation. He invited me to his house in Fiji. He asked me to travel to Australia and spend a week with him. And then I met him again when he was in Los Angeles. And then I went to London, met him, and then worked with him. And then I ended up taking a role in his company that he and Chet had started, where I became like the CTO, which is kind of a ridiculous job you would think for someone that technical background. But I worked with Robbins for a couple of years. I spoke at his seminars about business and things, and I created a job with him literally based on my ability to network. And so you can network. I mean, and that's well-known celebrity author, and I did the same thing with Chet Holmes. And so you can network into doing anything with anyone if you know what you're doing. And I've done this networking to meet people. I've met best-selling authors. I've met business tycoons, lots of movie stars, and other people based on my abilities to do that. So if you want to meet movie stars, you can do it. If you want to meet famous people, if you want to start companies, I mean, all these things you can do when you learn how to network. So how do you network to find a legal position? So this is one of the most important parts of the webinar right now. So I hope you've learned so far. I hope you've learned a tremendous amount, because what I've told you so far should make very clear to you that almost every success that I've had in my career, and it's the same thing with a lot of attorneys, people that get business and so forth and have long-term careers, is all about networking. So the first thing you need to do when you network is you need to know what you want. So I wanted to go to Harvard. I wanted to go to Stanford Business School. I wanted to go to University of Virginia, whatever it was. I wanted to work with Robbins. I knew I wanted to work with the Jonathan, go to this Jonathan Club thing where I'm still a member like 20 years later, whatever it is. So all these things I did because I knew I wanted them. So you can't just expect you're going to network if you don't know what you want. And because I knew I wanted these things, I went out of my way to find the people and ingratiate myself with people who had contact in these organizations, or however I could do it. I had to meet Holmes and I had to work with him and I had to get these introductions. None of these things would have happened if I did not actually want them first, and I had to set a goal. So if you want to work in SCAD and ARPS, you have to set that as a goal. If you want to work in Latham and Watkins, you need to set that as a goal. I know this woman, it's absolutely incredible. She graduated from law school and started off at this like 5-person law firm or something. And her goal when she was in law school was to work in Latham and Watkins. And she knew very early, she was talking to a recruiter in our company who had been with us for like, who worked with us for 15 years. That person told her, if you want to work in this firm, you're not going to get in there just based on trying to apply. You're going to have to actually build up a big book of business. And so she literally, from a 5-person firm, like a couple years into it, she built up a book of business, and then she moved herself to another firm. And then she wanted to work with bigger clients, moved to another firm. And then maybe 10 years out, she had this book of business that was maybe $2.5 million, which is amazing. And she finally got an interview with Latham and Watkins. And it wasn't the type of interview where they hired her. The recruiter just was like, I'll set up a meeting with you if you want, but I don't think anything's going to happen. So she went into this interview with Latham and Watkins, and it wasn't an interview. They basically said to her, you're on the right track, but you're going to need to get bigger clients and more business and things. And if you do that, come back to us in a couple of years. And the recruiter had constantly, but knew the person at Latham and Watkins in Chicago and talking positively about her. So that woman set a goal and she kept pushing at it and doing everything. And it took her, I don't know if she ever got in there because the recruiter in our company ended up leaving, but she was very close the last time I checked. And even the introductory meeting never would have happened. And she never would have even been in a position to talk to them about this if she didn't want it. And so you need to want something, you need to set a goal. If you want to work in a certain employer, you want to work in a certain practice area, you can't just wish it. You have to actually set that as a goal. And you have to have reasons for wanting to do something. So you have to, why do you want it? I wanted to go to the university for a lot of reasons. I was like bookworm. I liked reading and writing. I saw like so much of that there compared to other schools. I probably, based on, different things, wasn't qualified to go to school like Harvard then. I just liked that school and I had reasons for wanting it. And I went to classes and talked to people. I had reasons for wanting to go to the University of Chicago. Mainly, I mean, it's kind of crazy, but I liked my girlfriend at the time. Her ex-boyfriend or something went there and was very, very smart. And then she, I don't know, but I met him, set as a goal. But I liked it. I liked that it was social, the absolute opposite of Chicago. So I learned everything you could about the culture. And then I, went there and I ended up getting in. So same thing with Robbins. So out of millions of people that would like to sit down with him, I was able to do that and get his attention through networking and so forth. And so you need to know what you want. So what is it that you want? Like, what do you want? Do you want to have a book of business? What do you want? People that know what they want do very, very well. There was a guy, and I was in a class action case, I remember, where it's a stupid environmental case, but this class action case, and I was the lead attorney on it in our firm. It was a very stupid case. I'm not even going to talk to you about it. It was about employer CVS's and different places selling cigars without having a Proposition 65 warrant saying you could cancer. But there was this partner, this associate he was at, I don't know what it was, or maybe Mayor Brown, I think. And he would print out these articles that were related to this case. And he would send it to like all 50 law firms and things with notes that he'd written out a person and everything. And he did this, it was on the case for like a year, and it was just like all these connecting with everyone on the case and everything. It was like, but anyway, this guy, I encountered him like 5 years ago. He had like a $20 million book of business. He was networking and stuff. And I talked to him, about his career. He didn't want to go anywhere, but he said, I set a goal that I wanted to be like one of the top environmental attorneys in the country. And, I networked with everyone and I did all this. And so, by networking with those 50 plus firms that were in this stupid environmental case representing restaurants and anybody who would sell these stupid cigars were getting sued, I was able he was able to become a top environmental lawyer. So that's what he did. He developed a network. But how do you get a job at networking? How do you get clients networking? And this is something right now. I hope you write this down because it's very, very important. This is something that I have taught to associates that want to get partners. I've taught it to business. I've taught it to partners that want to get business, and it has changed the direction of their career in life. And so this is a very, very simple lesson. I hope you understand it right now. It's very, very important. So most people know somewhere between 1 and 500 people. If you take out a piece of paper and you write down all the people you know, it could be family members, it could be people from college or law school. You just write down every single person that you know. And again, these don't have to be, these could be friends of friends. I mean, people that you know. You write down every single person you know, and you start getting in contact with them. You check in, you send them birthday cards, you call them on their birthday. You just call them and just see how they're doing. And you're not even trying to get business. You're just getting in contact with the network and establishing the fact that people see you and they know you're there. They'll know you're an attorney. They know that they'll ask you what you do and things or what kind of work you do, but you just get in contact with a lot of people that you meet. It's no different than Bill Clinton meeting someone in Georgetown that might just be on the rowing team and has no connection to him, but he writes them down and he knows who they are and he checks in with them. And so you write down friends, former friends, acquaintances you met, relatives, coworkers, whoever these people are, you write them down and you just classmates you may have known, professors from college or law school, neighbors, people that you live next to or you've lived next to, people that you might have done business with, former clients. When I say people to know business with, there was one guy that I remember got this huge client, like this client that just changed the entire direction of his career. It was literally like a butcher, and he would go to this butcher, just kind of talk to him and stuff. And then the butcher asked him what he did. He gave him his business card, and this butcher's son was like the general counsel or something of this giant corporation and referred him and gave him. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. And this guy got this client that like changed like the entire direction of his life. Like he was like, eighth or ninth year or 10th year associate, not going anywhere, no business. And all of a sudden brings in this huge client, and the firm like has to make him partner because there's billing millions of dollars a year just from a butcher. I know someone else that got a big client through a dry cleaner, and the dry cleaner gave the dry cleaner his card or something. The dry cleaner put the card up on this, I don't know, this thing that they kept with their clients and things. They had people put their business card up and then someone came in and was some sort of startup company or something. I don't know, but referred this guy a huge client too. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. So you meet people. So current clients, who are your current clients? Who are clients you worked with in the past? Who are people that you've known? Who does your spouse know that you might have met? Who do you know from clubs or organizations you belong to? Like people just get clients you no idea, or jobs and things through this. So once you write down this list of people, you try to stay in touch with them. And you can call them, ask them how they're doing. You can send them emails and see how they're doing and checking in. You can do this. One guy I know that became a successful politician. I went to law school with him and I was in this political club, like I'm not gonna say it was Democrat or Republicans. And he was always networking and meeting people and things. And after law school, this guy used to call me like once or twice a year and ask how I was doing and stuff. And I was like, why is this guy calling me? I'm like 10 years out of law school. Anyway, the guy became a congressman. So I don't know what he's doing now, but checking in. And so when you do this, at some point you ask people how they're doing, you put interest in them, and you try to do this with as many people as possible, and you're always there. And at some point, these people may ask how you're doing. They may ask what kind of work you're doing. They may tell you that they know someone they can introduce you to. And it's just if you're looking for a position or you're trying to get business or whatever, that you can mention it if they ask you, but it's better off if this comes up after some time contacting the person. So when I started to, wanted to work with Robbins, I spent years impressing Robbins and making myself worthy of the introduction. Then I earned the introduction and without asking for it. And so by the time this happened, Robbins, because of the great things that Holmes was saying about me, and because he was Holmes's business partner, how I got this introduction and things worked out. So you're not going to if you are go far with networking, you need to be interested in other people, and you can't contact someone on the phone and ask them if they'll give you business or ask them for these things out of the blue. You just have to be there and be seen. So being seen means people know who you are. People think positively of you because you're contacting them and in touch with them. And just like the attorney I told you became like the biggest environmental attorney in the country. Like everybody he came in contact with, he found a reason to send them articles or all these different things. He never asked for anything, and he did. It became very powerful. God, I have so many examples of this of how people have done this. I mean, it's just I feel like I could talk about it a lot, but all of these things can help you. Like partners that associates that become partners and get huge books of business. There's one guy I know that got this, huge book of business, like 30, $40 million. And the firm he worked at, I mean, he's got like a guarantee of like $7 million a year. But this guy, he would go out when he was an associate and he would just go out and talk to companies and things and not ask for business and give them kind of free advice, and did this for years and built this book of business at a middle market firm and ended up getting a book of business by the time he was like 10 or 11 years out that was larger than all the other partners of the firm. And he did this just, he never asked for anything. He just found reasons to meet with people and companies, and he just networked his way into it. He had a goal. And when I was in my first year of law school, I remember I wrote a letter to the stepfather of my ex-girlfriend's best friend seeking a summer job. I met him one time and then I'd never had any connection with him. And then I'd send him a letter asking him, telling him how great I was and I wanted to meet with his law firm. And what I should have done, and I got a very bad response to him. It was very difficult. I should have called him on the phone or messaged him and asked him to meet him for coffee or something, an office to ask questions. I never built up a connection with him. And I, could have told him, that I didn't know any attorneys in Detroit, wanted to get some information about the law firms and work there. Instead, I just went and, I sent him a letter and then I called him on the phone, told him I wanted to interview there, and he basically hung up on me, and so I didn't go about it the right way. I didn't network. So I wanted to work at this firm in Detroit. I knew someone that was a partner there, but I didn't really know them very well, hardly at all. I just met them in passing. And then I tried to work there, send them a letter and so forth, and it didn't actually go about it the right way, meaning I should have called and networked. And so, if you ask people to meet with them for like an informational interview, meaning you just want to learn something about them or learn, something that takes a lot of courage, people will meet you for an informational interview. And most people don't do this. Most people just apply places saying they want a job. If you contact people and you say, "Hey, I'm interested in this practice area. Could I meet with you and talk to you about it?" People love giving people advice, and you don't have to ask for a job. You just tell them you're interested in it. So many times they will refer you to other people, and this kind of thing takes courage. And going out and just asking for an informational interview and networking, People know you want to work there if you're doing that. You never ask for a job, you just ask a lot of questions, and they will know people and often refer you to them. And so, people love sharing their knowledge and experience. People love talking to people. Clients or potential clients love getting free advice. And when's the last time someone asked you for advice? So people contacted you and asked you questions about different things and advice. Have people without wanting something in return? Most people don't do things like that. Most people just apply someplace or whatever and think that that's going to get them a job, but it doesn't work that way. So with this partner, that was a partner in a big Detroit law firm, I should have just said, "Hey, can I meet you for coffee and talk to you about the Detroit legal market?" And I probably wouldn't have been able to he would have liked me if I'd done that. I would have made him feel important if I was asking him questions. Instead, I did what most people do, and I just asked him for a job. I could have asked him why he chose his practice here. I could have asked him, did he think about working places other than Detroit? I could ask him if he liked his work. I could ask him if he'd done it over again and so forth. But instead, I just, asked for a job and basically. And if I told him if I had approached that the right way, then I would have probably done much better. So I just wanted to make sure you understand the situation I'm talking about here. I wanted to work at this Detroit law firm. I knew someone, but didn't really know them, who was a partner in this major law firm. Instead of calling him and asking him for an informational interview or telling him I'd like to meet him for coffee, kind of come downtown Detroit, buy him a coffee and ask about the Detroit legal market. I just sent him a long letter saying how great I was and wanted to work there. Then I called him on the phone, and when I was home at Christmas break, and he basically hung up on me because I never had networked with him. So that would have been a smart way to do it. I would have used that connection to make him feel important and then just gotten a connection there. He doesn't have to have a job. He could have referred me to someone else that have a job. But instead I just asked for something. So most people do that. Most attorneys, when they're trying to get business, will just call up someone and ask them if they can help them and do business. Most people that are trying to work in places will just send an application. And because they do that and they're just asking for something, people's defenses go up and they don't get what they want. Partners, by the way, they get a lot of business. They will do things like if someone is sued, they'll just kind of try to network with them and just say, "Hey, I'd love to talk to you about your case and what you're doing and give you some advice. I don't know if I can help you." They'll do things like that instead of just networking, or they'll network into to different things by just knowing people that are referring things to them. So you have to continually develop a network. And I told you about John Quinn earlier about not always been helpful to people early in his career, networking with people in Harvard Law School about, doing that. And so, you need to get out and meet people, and you need to go to events. You need to write down these people that you know and everybody that you know and try to stay in touch with them and just try to network into things. One of the, it was interesting. There was a partner I remember when I was at Dewey Valentine's, a New York law firm, and he brought in this huge case. It was defending Downey Community Hospital or something. And but I mean, case, $5-10 million in billions, something. It was a huge case, and he got that just by he just was on this board for the hospital. He lived in Downey and was on this board, never asked for anything, and just kind of was on this board. And this huge case came up, and he was the person that they thought would be, the best suited. I mean, to do it. I mean, to do it because he was there, because he knew people. So, when you're looking for a new position, you don't always you can get them many times without necessarily, you know, knowing people or I mean, without necessarily being the best applicant. And when you do that, you're going to do well. Most entrepreneurs and things that succeed will often do it by knowing people. So the networking stuff is incredibly important, and meeting new people and all this sort of thing. And so again, I wouldn't be where I am now had I not done a good job networking. I wouldn't have gone to schools. I wouldn't have done all these things, candidates, jobs, and none of this is really. Nothing is more important. It's the way you're going to get jobs. It's the way you're going to get business. And it's important. Years ago, there was a company that's still in existence called Vol, and this law firm. I mean, this company was sold. I knew the founders and things. It was sold for $65 million to a private equity firm, and this company wanted to give me private equity company came to me, and because I knew these people, they said, "Oh, this would be a great match for you," and wanted to give me half of Vol and $10 million, and in order to merge. And it was all because I knew these people, they liked my business, they knew who I was. And I didn't do this but I should have done it. And it led to discussions that helped me. They introduced me to all these other companies that maybe could buy me. And I met them, and I did work for them for the company. And I, wasn't smart enough to pursue that opportunity. Now I probably should have, but all this never would have happened without networking. So selling companies, getting jobs, getting to schools, getting business, all these sorts of things happen with networking. So if you learn how to network effectively and you are develop a network and you keep in touch with people and you get out and you do all these things and you don't ask people for things, you just are someone that's seen, you're going to get opportunities. You need to just to network with people. It doesn't, you never have to ask for anything. You can you would just be seen. Most of the time the people that get things are just there. They're seen, that people are referring them, all these connections. I mean, I've been referred by mechanics to people, and everybody you meet, you need to like be their friend and not ask for things, and just kind of be seen and be there. So I hope you understood everything I'm talking about today. I hope this has helped you a lot, but literally almost every possible success that you could think of and have can come if you're able to effectively network. And this is what people do that are successful. This is what politicians do that become president of the United States. This is what the successful business people do. This is how people often get into schools. This is how people get business. This is how people get jobs. So developing a network, knowing people, making connections with people, and really doing things in that sort of way. And early in my career, by the way, when I started making all these placements, I'll never forget it. It was most of the placements I made. My first year as a recruiter, I made like 30 placements, which is unheard of. I mean, that was, very, very successful as a recruiter. But most of those placements didn't come from just, randomly sending candidates' resume and a letter to the firms. It came because when I talked to the firms, when they would call, I would just sit there and have these long 1 hour conversations about their personal life and all these things, and my personal life, and bond with people. And then they may have been calling just to say we're not interested in the candidate, but all of these things happen because of my ability to network. And so my entire success, most of it, has come through the ability to network. And it should be the same thing for you. You cannot sit at your desk and expect great things to happen in your career if all you're doing is working. You're never going to get the type of jobs you want if you're not getting out there and networking. And I did bring up one point today, just, networking. When a candidate I'm working with, if I send them to literally 300 law firms and 275 or 80 of them, or maybe 291 have openings, that's a way of networking too. I'm just getting the word out about people and doing that. So again, anything you can do to network and learn about what I'm talking about today, I hope was, extremely helpful. I think that if you learn this sort of stuff, it's going to change the direction of your career and life. And just to make things very simple for you, how do you do this? Write down all the people that you know and try to stay in touch with them. Do not ask for anything, just be seen. When you meet people, get out there, be part of groups and things where you're seen. And you don't have to be the smartest person. You don't have to have the best personality. You just need to be seen. And I want to bring up again two examples that I think are very important. The guy that wanted to be one of the top environmental attorneys in the country, his associate, sending out articles, sitting there on a Saturday maybe and writing, printing out 50 articles and writing personal notes and sending it to everybody in the class action case when no one else is doing stuff like that. Getting out there and being part of groups like a hospital or something when you're not asking for anything, you're just being seen. Staying in contact with people, making sure that people that you meet along the way, whether it's a client you worked on or a partner or someplace you interviewed with, all these things can lead to things. It's interesting too, like when candidates go out that I send them out in interviews and they don't get the job, maybe for whatever reason, that's a form of networking too, because they meet people and then those people maybe refer something to them or meet people in the past. And so the people that succeed are often just the people that are seen. It doesn't, and they're not asking people for something, and it's just, this is how it works. Partner, again, another example. I mean, I hate to keep kind of running over this stuff again and again, but another example that I gave you of a guy that becomes one of the most powerful, well-known, corporate partners in Los Angeles, and maybe, a lot of, maybe part of the country. How did he do that? He did that through, just going out and meeting with companies and giving free advice for years. And then eventually when something happened, he was actually an M&A attorney. So he would go out and just talk to companies that weren't merging or anything, and just he would give them advice. Should you go public? Should you, what can you do? How can you reduce your expenses? How can you help with your exposure? Like all these sorts of things. It's just, God, so many great stories of people that have used networking to really change the course of their life. And you need to do this. You need to, do whatever you can to really make this a priority, and you need to know what you want and do it that way. So again, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what your law school qualifications are. None of this matters. If you learn how to network effectively, you can really great things can happen. All right, so we'll do a quick break, and then when I come back, I will answer questions. If you were on the webinar last week and I didn't get to your questions, got no, you get a lot of them. I'll try to answer those today. And then I typically will, I'll stay as long as you have questions. So you can ask any questions you have, and I will make sure that they're answers today. And then, yeah, it doesn't have to be about network. It can be about anything in your career that, that you think is helpful. But again, I think this is extremely important. Everything I covered today is something that people that I've advised and coached for years and paid, tens of thousands of dollars. I mean, a lot of what I cover in this particular webinar is kind of the secrets and how people do it and more. And because this is what leads to jobs, this is what leads to business, this is what leads to stability in your career and all sorts of things. I mean, I've got so many stories, and I just love telling them because they're just so important. There was after, it was like 2008, there was this huge, like all these corporate attorneys were like losing their jobs. And there was this guy who's like sixth or seventh year, he lost his job. He was at a big firm in New York. I don't know what it was. And this guy would just call me and just talk to me about crap and just ask me, what I was going, where I've seen opportunities. And he told me that he's doing this with all sorts of recruiters. He's calling and networking with recruiters, trying to set up, coffees and things. And then he was out there every day in New York, just trying to set up, meetings and just networking with people, even though they didn't have jobs and things. And this guy got a good job when no one was getting jobs. But again, this kind of personality is going out and just trying to meet people and things. I mean, he ended up becoming a, extremely powerful corporate attorney. And I have like law.com and things would see him mention. People that just do this stuff, I mean, it just really makes a huge difference. Okay, so we'll take a quick break, and then when I come back, please ask as many questions as you have. You may have the questions do not have to be related to this at all. Back in 1 minute, and then we'll do questions. Thanks. All right, so we'll go to questions. 1 second here. And I always think that questions are like the most important part of the webinar, because I think it's an opportunity for you to really kind of, give advice that can change many times the course of your career. Because again, I've been doing this for 25 years. And I've seen everything. I know the mistakes people are making. And sometimes just the answer to like one question can make can change, could really help you tremendously. So I hope you will ask questions, because I love answering these questions. I speak to people every day where just they ask a question or I'm talking to a candidate or something, and just one little piece of advice. Not because there's anything unique or that I have any special gifts or anything, but having seen what people are doing and the mistakes people have made over course of a long career can really help them. Okay, let me just see. All right. Okay, so here's the first question. So the first question is, as someone who in the DMV who was in big law for 5.5 years and then a victim of a stealth layoff with other juniors after returning from FML leave. I graduated from top 5 law school and found myself doing consulting work for the past 1.5 years for a law school and a UNA agency. However, my contracts were impacted by USA being disbanded, and now it's a struggle to find jobs in a market flooded with senior laid off government attorneys. Any advice? Okay, so this is a good question. So in this question, I will answer your question about what to do. but I'm also going to tell people some kind of career advice. So the problem is anytime you choose to go into another practice setting, meaning you choose to go in the government, you choose to go in house or whatever, you've sort of told law firms that you would prefer to be in that practice setting. And when you go into a different practice setting, no one knows the quality of work that's required for an in-house attorney or for whatever government agency you're with. And so law firms are going to be suspect for anybody that's not coming from a law firm. So anytime you make a decision to go into another practice setting, you're kind of casting your lot with that. I had a woman I was speaking with yesterday. She's a family law attorney. She's been practicing for like 1 or 2 years, and I just got her a job with another good family law firm, paying like $40,000 more than she was making her last job. But she was also saying she was got this government job, and she was thinking about taking it because she would get better health insurance. And I was like, "Are you freaking crazy? Like, if you go and you get 5 years of training as a family law attorney, you're going to be able to start your own firm. You'll be able to work in other firms, and you can do something for the rest of your career. Whereas if you take this job in-house or with the government, just because of health insurance, you're going to basically, you'll have to work in a government job, and you'll have to try to find another one if you lose it. And you're never going to be able to develop a book of business. You're not going to be in a well-defined practice area. I mean, something that people are always going to be hiring for. You can always get a job as a family law attorney. You can start your own practice, whatever. So I talked about that. So people make these decisions to go in-house or to go in the government. And when you do that, law firms are not going to hire you because they will hire you, but I'm going to tell you to get a job in a second. But they're going to prefer to hire someone coming from another law firm, wouldn't you? I mean, if you were a law firm and if you had the choice to hire someone from a law firm or someone from the government or someone that's consulting, you would choose someone from another law firm. So, and you're right, the market is absolutely flooded with senior laid off government attorneys. When I go into the BCG database several times a day and I review candidates, I review every candidate that comes into BCG. So if you've applied and gotten rejected or said we're going to work with you, you would be because I reviewed your resume, but I can't place most people from government jobs in a law firm, which is all I do, because law firms want to hire people from other law firms. So what is my advice about how to get a job? Well, the best way for you to get a job is not to apply to just job openings, because law firms with job openings are going to hire people that are coming from other law firms most of the time. And maybe you got lucky, but most cases not. So what do you do? So what you do is you'll try to put yourself in a position where you're not competing with other people looking for jobs. So you have to apply to lots and lots of places that don't have openings. And having 2.5 years of experience in a big law firm is good, but you have to apply to lots and lots of places. When I say lots and lots of places, what does that mean? That means you're going to apply to whatever market you're in. You should be applying to, if you're a corporate attorney, you should be applying to 500 or 800 firms or whatever it is in New York City that do corporate law. Probably not the biggest ones, but smaller to mid-sized ones. You should look in other markets. So if you're licensed in New York, you should start trying to find people that have corporate practices in the hundreds and hundreds of different cities and things in New York State. You should be trying to, if you're from a market, maybe you're from Pittsburgh, you should do the same thing with all the firms in Pittsburgh if you want to ever move back there. So people just need to apply to lots of places. That's it. And then you try to network as well, but it's going to be very difficult in your position to network immediately into positions. So you just need to apply to lots and lots of places. And this is a mistake that most people make, is when they're looking for a job, they think that they have to just apply to openings, and then they kind of give up if they feel like they're in a position where they're not getting placed, there's not jobs. So what do you do? I mean, I give this example to a lot of people, but cities in New York State by population, and this is a very important lesson I hope everybody learns today, because anybody can get a job. So here's all the recommendation firms, municipalities in New York State. Got all these different places. They're sorted by, let's say, sorted by population. So go to the largest to the smallest. Okay, so 8 million New York, and then just in whatever this is, Orange, New York, what is this? Curious, Joel, Spring, Long Beach, New York, Nassau, Poughkeepsie, New York, so 31,000 people. Okay, so, you would just, you go in here and, I mean, just the level of opportunity is meaning all these municipalities, as long as they're more than like 10,000 people, but, they're gonna have positions, so corporate law firms in whatever it is, senior. So these are all law firms that do corporate, just in Poughkeepsie. So these are business law attorneys, Wallace and Wallace, and so you approach these guys and you tell them, I'm interested in doing. Who would you contact here? You would contact either Wallace and Wallace, or you could say Craig Wallace. Contact Craig Wallace and say, hey, I worked at this law school. I'm the top 5 law school. I worked at this firm. I really want to get back into corporate law. Can you, help me, or did you, whatever possible to have an informational interview or something. This guy, I guarantee you, Craig Wallace is not getting applicants from people that went to top 5 law schools that have worked in big firms. And so that's what you do. And you contact him, but you would have just in Poughkeepsie, New York, we just looked at this, you're going to have lots and lots of different firms that do this kind of work. It's just absolutely insane. So this is the problem with most people looking for jobs. They're only looking for job openings. They're not applying to lots of different places. And again, when I showed you this just a second ago, I mean, it should be obvious to you like how many cities there are just in New York State. Every single one of these, if you're a corporate attorney, almost get above 10,000. You're talking about thousands of places you can apply to. So my advice to you or to anybody on this call is you need to make sure I got the right thing here. 14 is part right. Yeah. You need to apply to lots of places and find places to apply to. It's as simple as that. And most people are not doing that, and that's what limits them. So just getting out to a lot of places. This is what I would do for you if you were a candidate. Now, I probably wouldn't work with you because you're not coming from a law firm, but that's how you get a position. Okay, I'm a new associate. This is from last week. I'm a new associate in a plaintiff side litigation firm. I'm having trouble figuring out what balance I should have regarding being cordial versus aggressive when dealing with opposing defense counsel, including court appearance. What advice would be good for this? So you do not need to, I mean, in court, your job is to argue, and in motions and things, your job is to argue. In depositions, your job is to get your side heard. So, do you want to be cordial or aggressive? You can actually be both. So being cordial to opposing counsel is absolutely fine. I mean, but important things and in motions and letters, you need to be very aggressive. So it's kind of up to you, but the best attorneys are respected often by the other side, and you don't have to make things personal with the people that you're coming up against, but you certainly can. And that's kind of a stylistic method. Like, what is the best way for you, I mean, to to network with people, but at the same time be aggressive. What I would do if I was in your situation probably is I would look at kind of how are the successful partners in my firm doing things, kind of learn from that. So the partner who I know at a firm has nothing to do with hiring the HR department. How can I utilize my connection provision of that law firm? So just because a partner, first of all, law firms work for partners. So if you know a partner in a law firm, it's important to understand that a law firm exists to provide a platform for partners to service their books of business, meaning a law firm sits there and a partner comes with a book of business, and the law firm provides them secretaries, paralegals, associates, office space, a brand, and that's what a law firm does. It's the law firm services the partner. So if a partner has nothing to do with the HR department, that doesn't mean that they don't have some pull and can't get you hired. If a law firm, the partner's powerful enough, and a partner can get you hired. If the law firm thinks they can use you, so you can utilize your connection for a position at law firm. But usually, the best way to do that is to network with a partner and have them know you in a decent way, and then meaning that they think highly of you. You're just kind of in contact with them, like out of the ordinary, and then if there is a position, then you can contact them. But yeah, so I mean, That's partners can all, and that's really the most important thing I would recommend is just to know is that when you're trying to get a position in a law firm, the best way to do that and the best network is usually with a partner. Associates, you never can, as I talked about earlier, you never can really guarantee exactly what's, how that's going to help you because you don't know how they do it. What are the career implications of taking a sabbatical as a practicing attorney? It's not good. When you take a sabbatical, you're sending a message to future employers that you may not, that you may not be committed. Lawyers are not supposed to stop working, so it's just I hate to say that, but the second you get out of law school, you're kind of expected to continue working without large breaks in your career. Women take time off to have kids, and that's accepted. But taking a sabbatical sends a message to future employers that you may not be committed. And if you're trying to work after a sabbatical in a different firm, just keep in mind that, I think the biggest lesson I can give you is anytime you do something in your career, whether it's going in-house or government, whether it's taking a sabbatical, whatever you do, just keep in mind that law firms, when they're hiring people, are comparing you against a pool of applicants. And so they're more likely to hire someone that's currently working than someone that took a sabbatical, because the person who takes sabbatical says maybe they're not as committed. So that's how you have to think about that. So if you're trying to work in another law firm, it doesn't mean you can't get a job in another law firm. If you're in a practice area where there's a lot of demand for you and there's not enough people in the market, then that's okay. Sometimes you might be in a practice area where there's not enough people. So if you're like family law, trust and estate, you take a sabbatical and there's not enough people like you, then yes, you can get hired, but it does put you at a disadvantage. If you take a sabbatical in your existing firm, sometimes that's actually okay. And law firms will think that's okay if it's your existing law firm, but in general, law firms don't like it. One of the biggest warnings I can give you that I see with men all the time. And when I say I see it like, I don't know, once a month almost. I mean, a lot. And these are candidates that may be working with. Men will approach me and say, I'm looking for a job, I'm not getting enough work and stuff. And I'll talk to them, and they might have gone to a top 10 law school and be at a major law firm. And a lot of these guys, like what happens is and I hate to say this, I'm not saying this about any firm, but substantial number of top law firms, if a man takes a paternity leave, like they offer that as a benefit, but if a man takes a paternity leave, it's just not respected. Like the law firm, I mean, they don't care about maternity leave, but a paternity leave, men take this and then they come back and like no one's giving them work or respects them, and it's just, so you take time off a lot of times and it's not well received. And the sabbatical just sends a certain message. It's going to make it more difficult for you to get a position compared to other people that haven't taken sabbaticals. And if you do it within your own firm, sometimes that's okay, but generally law firms are going to, compare you to people at your existing firm that haven't taken sabbaticals. That's what I would think about. Now, if you need to take a sabbatical because you've been working 3,000 hours a year, you're in a really big firm, but you just can't handle it anymore. You need to like get some breathing room, think that's what you want to do, then do it. But just remember, it's going to make it harder for you to get a position if you're looking for a job compared to someone who hasn't. What role does an attorney's personal network play in long-term retention integration in a law firm? So networking is very important, even in your own law firm. And let me explain why. I see all these examples all the time of attorneys that are in law firms, and they may not have a book of business, but they have this incredible network, and they're very well networked with maybe one partner that has a lot of business. And that partner with a lot of business, if there's a partner in a law firm and they have $10 million in business and they want to make someone a partner, that person with a lot of business will often have a lot of power to make you a partner and all these different things if you have that network. So a network in your existing firm is very important. And the better your network, the more people think positively of you, the less likely you are to lose your job when things slow down, the more likely you are to become a partner if someone has enough business to make you a partner, all these sorts of things. And just remember that when people make decisions about who to advance, who to keep and let go, and all these sorts of things, that network is going to come into play. So to have that, just to stick around. The more people that you know and the more people think positive about you and defend you and advance you, the better off you're going to be. Sorry. The next question: how do I break into a niche practice area like space law or cannabis law as an attorney? Well, you have to do two things. You have to find someone to hire you in that practice area, or you have to go out and try to develop clients in that practice area. So practice here like cannabis law or space law, you would have to, be in a firm where they potentially have clients that might want to do space law, or they might have clients that you help with cannabis law. So you would try to hopefully network in your own firm and talk to partners and express some interest in it and try to get work there. And then if you do get work, try to get more and more work. Sometimes there are LLMs. I think there might even be an LLM in space law. I mean, I can't believe it. Let me just see here. LLM in space law. Yeah. So look at this. There are actually LLMs in space law. I mean, I can't believe it, but there actually are. So there's one here McGill, there's another at the University of Mississippi. There's all these LLMs in space law, which is really hard to believe, but I guess there's some foreign ones. But you can go do things like get an LLM sometimes, or you can, try to network in your existing firm and get work, or you can try to network in other firms. But that's, those are difficult practice areas. Cannabis is not as, it still is a practice area. It was a kind of a big thing for a while when I was starting in different states like California, but typically you would network and try to get business in your own firm. You can get now, you can go and, try to network outside your firm is what I'd recommend. But if you really want to do space law, cannabis law, you should have pretty compelling reasons for wanting to do something like that. And that could help you. Let me see. Okay, next question. I'm currently working at a law firm as a paralegal. I'm applying to law school. Should I request a letter of recommendation from my boss? I'm unsure, as you might think I will leave the firm if I get my law degree. There's no option for me to get an attorney job at the firm as it is small. Thank you. I don't think a law firm is going to care very much if you want to go to law school as a paralegal. If you're doing a good job, then certainly they're happy to write you a letter of recommendation, I would think. But if you don't want to get a letter of recommendation, then get it from someone else. In general, when you're applying to law schools, just so you kind of have a good understanding of things, law firms, law schools just kind of care about your grade point and your LSAT score. That's kind of the main thing they're judging you on. I don't think letters of recommendation, I mean, they certainly can mean something, but I don't think that, you need to worry too much about that or where that comes from. I mean, obviously a letter of recommendation can help you, but when law schools are admitting people, it's honestly, it's based more on your grade point average and your LSAT scores than anything like that. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. Okay, next question. Let's see here. I'm a partner without a book of business. My goal is to build a book of business. I understand the importance of relationship development. Is there a point in the networking relationship where you make the ask, or you let them come to you? Typically, you're better off, when you're networking, you're better off not asking for anything. You try to give advice to people about whatever they're doing. You can do things like send them articles. You can basically be seen there. But in a networking relationship, people will know who you are, and they'll know hopefully what you do, and then they will often refer work to you that way. So, but you're better off typically just networking with people and not necessarily, not necessarily asking for things, because if you ask for something, that puts people on the defensive. And so when you ask for something, that makes them feel like they have to respond positively. If they don't, you're not going to like them or whatever, whatever it is. So they don't, that's not usually the best thing. So the more people you network, it's really just about, it's about being seen. So being seen is really the most important thing. And if you're seen, then people are more likely to refer things to you. But you just need to be seen by as many people as possible. And I think that's the example that I was giving earlier, just about the importance of constantly being in touch with people, and if you're seeing, people will know what you do, and that's really the best. Next question: how can I build a strong network in law school, introverted or uncomfortable with traditional networking? So in law school, some people are not that outgoing, which is perfectly fine. But again, it's how do you develop a network? If I was a law student doing it over again, I mean, I guess you want to be seen in a positive light by your law school classmates, and you want to try to be nice to people and hopefully stay in touch with them. And you could be just brilliant. You could be like really good in tax law or something, and just showing enthusiasm for whatever you're doing, and someone that's really competent and ethical and all those sorts of things, people will remember you better. You can join organizations and things you're comfortable with and try to meet people that way and just contribute. And hopefully those people will be in positions of power and things, or they will have positions and things that they can give you in the future or have some sort of impact over. Okay, next question. What are the best ways to prepare for a law firm merger or acquisition as an attorney? So that's a good question. So what'll happen a lot of times is you could be in a law firm and that law firm could merge with another law firm. If that happens, what'll happen is the culture will change. Different people will come into power in the law firm and people may leave. The law firm may become like a better place to work or become a much worse place to work because all of a sudden you have two groups of people that are competing for power and whatever it is inside the law firm. So for compensation and things. So what is the best way to prepare for that? The best way to prepare for that and to do really well in your career is to do whatever you can to try to get close to partners that have a lot of business. So any associate in a law firm should always try to be close to the people that have as much business. So you want to get work from the attorneys with business. You want to you basically, the closer you are and the more people with a lot of business like you, the better off you're going to be, because those partners may leave, and if they leave, you want to be the person they take with them, or that's really your goal. So how do you prepare for merger and acquisition? You try to make sure that you have powerful friends. If you aren't able to do that and you feel like the merger, whatever, is going to be problematical for you for whatever reason, then there's nothing wrong with looking for a job. But yeah. So how has current political landscape affected attorney placement, specifically those considered first generation DEI hires? Okay, so to answer your question, there's kind of two parts to that. How has the current political landscape affected attorney placement with first generation DEI hires? Well, law firms have just their businesses, and so law firms, the makeup of attorneys in there should reflect society, and it should reflect, there needs to be a diversity, not just because of diversity, but there needs to be diverse. Well, yeah, actually, because of diversity, because law firms represent clients that have diversity within them. So most companies will have people that are of different races and sexes and so forth, and so they want their attorneys to be similar. There's that makeup. They don't want to have so law firms want diversity, not just for the sake of diversity, but because that's who their clients. I mean, their clients need diversity, and people want to be represented by diverse, different types of people. So how's the current landscape affected it? I don't think the current political landscape is really affected at all. I think law firms, just as a general rule, want diversity, and they need it. That's the whole other question, is like, how do first generation DEI hires do within law firms? So I think I want to actually bring up a very important point, and I don't want to offend anybody, so I'm actually going to paint this in kind of a broad picture. But what happens with first generation people? It doesn't matter if you're black or you're white or whatever, but a lot of times people that are first generation professionals in the legal profession, then their parents might have been working class or whatever it is, but they don't have adequate models. So they may go to law school and they may associate with only people of their race or only people that are other first generation type of people. And so they don't have models of how they need to, what they should be doing inside of a law firm to succeed. Like, what is the importance of staying with a law firm? What is, how do you act towards superiors? Do you treat them like a working class person would treat a boss, or do you treat them like partners, like people that it's a partnership as opposed to an employment relationship? And so people that, for example, if their parents were attorneys, they will know how to go into a law firm often and how to succeed there because they'll have models for that. Or if they're friends with other people that know like what to do and how to behave and how to get ahead and their work, how to network and all these things. If they're friends with people like that when they're in law school and associating with people like that, then they're much likely to do better. So it's all kind of the models that you have. And these models, having a network of people that are successful and being around other people that have, that know what to do is important. So what I see a lot, and I will be completely honest with you, first generation people, and it often could be related to the race. So a lot of times there are first generation people of different races and things that don't have these sort of models like of what it takes to succeed. They don't necessarily always associate with other people that are on the same path. They don't have models. They don't know how to make decisions. They don't know how to do all these different things. And so that ends up hurting them. So I see a lot of first generation people go into law firms and they will just quit, or they'll work there for 1 year or something. They need to go back, or they won't make the right decision. So I don't think that being a first generation DEI person is actually very helpful. It can get you hired. There's absolutely no question about it, because law schools typically don't graduate enough. People want people that are DEI hires. That's not going to change. And people that are DEI hires are very much in demand. But if you're a first generation person, I'm not going to make the statement about DEI, but if you're a first generation person, or you come out of a working class background, you don't often have a lens of how to view things. You may think you don't know, you're not surrounding yourself with other people that are going to be successful in law firms. You're surrounding yourself with people that may not have the same ways of thinking about things. So when you do get into a law firm, you need to make sure that you have other people that you're associating with that kind of know the rules and will give you more of a landscape of a way of thinking about things. And so, but yeah, first generation DEI hires, law firms absolutely want them. It makes it easier for you to get a job, not because law firms are giving you a break and not hiring the people as qualified. It makes it easier for you to get a job because law firms need to reflect what the businesses are like that they're serving. And law firms are also judged by vault and other things by their diversity. So diversity is important, not just because because you're diverse. It's important because law firms need diversity inside of them, but succeeding as a diverse candidate or a first generation candidate, the only way you can really do that a lot of times is if you know how other people that are succeeding there, how they're thinking about things, and what kind of filters you're using to judge your employers. I just see it a lot. People that that may be first generation people, they just get into law firms and they make all these mistakes. They don't understand they don't have models of like the fact of the kind of decisions they need to make in order to have long-term success. So yeah, but I don't think anything with the landscape has affected DEI, whereas law firms still people that are diverse. Sometimes the thought of going to network events seems feels overwhelmingly, especially after a long workday or knowing I may not know anyone there. How does this semi-introverted, socially awkward attorney network effectively? So you don't have to have incredible networking skills. You just need to get out there and try to meet as many people as possible. You go to dinner, you'll sit next to someone, you just do whatever you can to try to meet people. And then it doesn't necessarily need to be networking events. You just need to be there and be seen. And anybody, regardless of if you're introvert or socially awkward, just getting out there as much as you can and meeting people is important. And that's kind of the main thing I can say to you. And the better off you do with that, the more success you can have. Just in terms of kind of people inside of law firms. So there's always there's a statement, I learned this very early in my career, but there's minders, grinders, and then binders. So what does that mean? So you'll always have people that are supervisors and things that are making, business decisions and things. Of binders are kind of people that are setting the rules and things inside of law firms. As partners often, grinders, which are people that just do a lot of work and bill a lot of hours, and binders, which are people that go out and develop business. So being a grinder, I know plenty of grinders. I was working with one yesterday that has he makes $500,000 a year, no business, but he gets out there and works hard. He's 20 years out and is doing fine. So you can be a grinder and have a career that's working very, very hard, but it's not going to give you as much employment stability as if you have the skills of a binder, which are trying to, trying to get business and things. So if you're a grinder and you do really good work for different partners and things in your firm, that can give you employment stability. You don't need to always be a binder, but in order to have a lot of long-term employment stability, which means you're going to have business and things, being a binder is something that you should try to do and learn. And just because you're socially awkward, that doesn't mean that if you do really good work and things and you're enthusiastic about your subject matter, that people aren't going to give you work. So, okay, so there's some questions, or about 2 or 3 questions about LinkedIn. I am not LinkedIn expert. What I do on LinkedIn is essentially it's not a lot, but people will connect with me. I will try to connect with them. If they're a candidate, I'll try to send them an invitation. I don't do enough of it, but you just connect with different people. And then you just try to get yourself out there and you push content out that's related to your practice area. So you just start pushing things out, writing opinions, being seen for that, and then building a network and connecting with clients, connecting with people in your industry, connect with your practice area, connect with companies, whoever it is. I would just start posting things on there and then maybe send your connections information, not asking for anything and just being seen. So that's how I would recommend using LinkedIn. There are all sorts of other tools you can use, like buying in-mails and things. Sometimes people I've known attorneys that have hired people for like $500 a month and stuff in the Philippines, whatever it is, to work on their LinkedIn accounts all the time. So I don't know a ton about LinkedIn, but there are classes you can take. There are also things. And I think LinkedIn is an amazing tool for attorneys and to develop a network and to hopefully to potentially get business. And so it's a great thing. But if you really want to use it, I would take classes in that. There's online classes of things that can teach you things. There's probably been classes for attorneys, and then using it effectively, or even sometimes hiring someone to help you. I mean, if you're, associate, you're making $150,000 a year or whatever, you can probably afford to pay someone $500 a month to work on your LinkedIn account full time or whatever it is. But I think it's an amazingly effective tool, and that's it's example earlier, the person that said they're socially awkward. I mean, you can if you want to get work and you want to do really well, there's always a way. And I think LinkedIn is a great tool. It's an amazing tool if you know how to use it. I personally should be using it a lot. I have people work for me that post things on it, but I do not have the time in my day to work on it, and I should, but I have people helping me, and so you should use LinkedIn as a way to look like someone that's very good in your practice area, someone that's providing value to other connections, someone that seems like they have a lot of interest in whatever you're doing. I mean, I've seen attorneys get business through it a lot. I mean, they often will they'll develop whatever, they'll look very strong in their practice here, connect with people and send out information and just look referable by their interest in whatever it is, and people will find them. It's a great question. It's an awesome tool to use. Okay, last question this is from last week. I'll just answer real quick. So someone said, is the employment market really bad right now? Layoffs seem to be everywhere in all industries. Yeah, so the market is bad for a lot of attorneys. There's certainly a lot of layoffs. There's the employment market, if you look at the employment reports and stuff, is bad, but I don't really see in my practice, like, there's always plenty of opportunity. People always need trust in the state's work. They always need family law. Companies are always litigating. Companies always need general corporate type work done. They may not be merging or anything, but there's always work out there. So if you're laid off from a firm, or you think you're going to be laid off, there's always going to be other people that have work, and it's not really anything to worry about, in my opinion, because there's plenty of opportunity. There's 100,000, plus law firms with more than 10 people. There's, probably 500,000 small law firms or solo practitioners. There's always opportunity. So I don't, when people say that there's nothing out there or whatever, it's not, anything. I don't think it's anything to worry about. I mean, there's always opportunity. You go to smaller markets, you can always find jobs. It's not really that. Okay. So yeah, and one of the things I wanted to bring up too is this is just kind of a question to answer your question a little more detail. In 2008 and 9, the market was just horrible and all these people were losing their jobs. And I had different offices around the country. I had one in Chicago and New York, and these are just two examples. And the attorneys in New York just were like trying to, place attorneys from top law firms and other top law firms in New York, and there was just like no hiring. And I went to visit the office, and like these recruiters hadn't made placements in a long time. And one was like, she didn't have money to buy food, and this stuff is ridiculous. And they had made placements in like 4 or 5 months, and it was normal. There were no jobs in New York, but they were only trying to move people around to prestigious firms in New York. They weren't trying to look at middle market firms, and they weren't trying to look at firms outside of New York City. And then I had another recruiters in Chicago, and I told both of the recruiters at the beginning of this, I was like, you just need to send people to smaller markets. Like, don't concentrate trying to make placements in the big cities because they're overwhelmed with candidates. And so the recruiters in Chicago, there was a woman there that would basically listen to everything I said, would take my advice, and had made her successful. She'd been like a recruiting coordinator prior to coming to work for me, and then her was making, $250,000 a year, like every year for, it was 20 years ago. So it's probably like $500,000 a year now, just doing very, very well. And I was following my advice. And I said, you just have to send your candidates to like smaller markets, send them to the suburbs and, outside Chicago. And so the two recruiters that were sitting in that office did that. And both of them had just as good a years as they'd had when the market was good. And because law firms, companies would send their work to firms that were less expensive. And then law firms in these smaller markets, these suburbs like Evanston, wherever, Chicago, would be interested, were hiring interest in these really good attorneys. And so they did fine. So anytime the market's bad, you just need to put yourself and apply to firms in markets where there's not a lot of people like you. You can always, the market's never bad. So anytime you think the employment market's bad, it may be bad in the largest firms, but there's always opportunity in smaller markets and smaller firms. Yeah, can attorneys make a career out of contract or temporary positions? I have not actively looked because I'm not sure a law firm position is for me. Could I do it for a period of time? But the idea of doing it for the rest of my life depresses me and discourages me from even applying. So I don't think any attorney should have a career based on contract or temporary positions. I do know one guy, it's kind of interesting. He was a very smart guy, like almost perfect score on his LSATs. He was from this background where both of his parents were like hippies and things, and very smart guy though. And he graduated from UCLA and just went right into doing contract work. What was interesting about him is he just lived very frugally doing this work for, I don't know, did it for maybe 15 or 20 years and saved up all this money and retired when he was in like his mid 40s. And now he's just kind of doing whatever, like, it's nothing, just traveling, but he's retired. I mean, so he saved up all his money doing that. And he never wanted to work full time in a law firm and did that and had the career he wanted. A very smart guy, could have worked in major law firms. So what does that mean? So you can make that decision to work as a contract or temporary attorney if you want to, and you can have a career and you can retire if you save your money. I mean, there's nothing wrong with doing that, but no attorney needs to take a contract or temporary position. There are always plenty of jobs. I mean, think about it. I mean, think of them as examples, but there's so many different positions, and personal injury or trust in states or insurance defense, or there's always people that will hire you for like a real job where you can have a career. You can always even start your own firm doing something. People do it all the time, right out of law school. And there's so many different things you can do. You can make a career out of doing all sorts of different types of practice. So why would you be a contract attorney? I mean, if you're a contract attorney, it's like, you're basically like working by the hour, and you have these jobs that don't have any stability. You're never developing a book of business. You're taking jobs where you're not able to go deep in a practice area and work on clients. There's no reason to do that. It doesn't matter where you went to law school. It doesn't matter how well you did. It's interesting, like Joe Biden, I met a guy that used to be a tenured professor at Syracuse, and Joe Biden was actually last in his class at Syracuse, and became president. I know one of the most successful attorneys in history in Chicago, Phil Corboy, personal injury attorney. He was like last in his class at Loyola Law School in Chicago. Anybody can get a job, anybody can work as an attorney. There's no reason to take a contract or temporary position because you've given up on practicing law or whatever. No one should be a contract or temporary attorney. There's always jobs. And, if you don't think a law firm position is for you, you can go into other practice settings. You can work for the government as an attorney. You can do all these different things, but why would you spend all this money going to law school and getting a degree and all these different things if you just wanted to work as an hourly contractor without any stable position? It doesn't make any sense. I don't know why attorneys do it, because there are plenty of jobs out there. You can start your own practice, you can do all these different things. I don't know why anybody would do it. People do it, but it's not something you should do as a last resort. If you decide you're going to do that, like, I just don't know. I mean, people make great livings doing just ridiculous stuff. They could be, you would never think an attorney, the motivation to go to law school and take the bar you can be an incredible real estate agent, or even a car salesman. Car salesmen, can make $500,000 a year. I was reading recently about people that you can become a policeman. This is not something you should do. In San Francisco, someone come out of the police academy and they can't find enough people to even do it. You make like $150,000 your first year, and then you can make like $250,000 a year with overtime and stuff. And after you've been doing it for like 15 or 20 years, you make $250,000 a year, maybe 300,000 being a policeman in San Francisco. And then not only that, but I don't know what it is, after 20 or 25 years, they give you 80% of your last year's pay for the rest of your life when you're retiring. Plus you get health insurance and all these. There's so many careers people can have that don't involve practicing law where you can do. And I just don't understand why someone would work as a contractor when there's all these other careers you could do, and not even, or you can practice law and you don't have to be really smart. You can start your own practice or do other different types of things. It's all about your motivation. I just don't think it's a good idea for anybody to become a staff attorney, staff attorney is okay, but a contract attorney, all these sorts of things. It doesn't benefit you. Hello, I was working as a post-law clerk at a small law firm, was let go due to lack of work. As someone who is yet to become an associate attorney, do I face similar struggles to those who are seeking lateral positions? Are there specific strategies I can implement during my job search? Yes. So fine, apply to jobs that are out there and see what you can get. But the market is absolutely astronomically large. There are so many different places you can apply that don't have jobs. There are, in California, tens of thousands of solo practitioners and small law firms. What do? You can apply everywhere. You can apply to small firms that don't have openings. You can apply. I told this story before in webinars, but I had a law firm in Malibu for, I don't know, 15 years or something. I don't know what it was. And the law firm basically existed to service things that I need done with business. But what was interesting about that law firm is it was on the web. So if you search for law firms in Malibu, it would come up first. And so this law firm was sitting there, and in the entire history of the law firm over like 15 years, I never once hired anybody. I'm sorry, only a couple times did anybody like walk in with a resume and say, hey, I'm in Malibu, I'd really like to work here. Here's my resume. I only had that happen like twice the entire time the law firm existed. And I had in-house counsel jobs. I remember they're advertised, and I was getting calls from attorneys at like major law firms saying that they wanted to work in-house for me and stuff. But I had one time this woman walked in, and she was like just getting like a master's degree or something in international arbitration. She was probably in her early 60s, and walked in and said, oh, I've read your articles. I'd love to work at this firm and everything. And so I hired her, and she was just like a horrible hire, like the worst attorney. Like she couldn't even put together like argument. It was just horrible. But I hired her, and then I tried to make her work for several months, like a year. And the point is, like, no one ever contacted me, and I hired her even though I'm a really smart recruiter, just because that person came in and made a contact with me. And so think about, there's just so many small law firms. No one ever just comes in and proactively applies to them. And there's just so many places you can apply. It's just absolutely ludicrous to me that people don't think there's any opportunities. And whether you're a law student or a practicing attorney, there's just so many. I left my company because the company decided to scale back on its expansion. I was given a nice severance. How do I communicate that to an employer? I'm looking for a position, but the current market seems more difficult than expected. Okay, so the United States, millions of companies, so millions of places you can apply, millions of entrepreneurs you can send your resume to saying you'd like to help them with their companies, thousands of in-house job openings in different cities. And it's just, there's so many opportunities. So just because a company scales back, that doesn't mean that other people are going to hire you. And by the way, one of the reasons I don't like people and they don't really promote, I don't think in-house jobs are a good idea, is what happens to most people that go in-house. That what you're talking about is very common. Most people, when you go in-house companies will scale back, they will go out of business, they will merge, they will hire, and all these things affect your employment stability. They will hire a new general counsel, and that general counsel want to bring in their own people and get rid of the existing people. A new CEO will come in and want their own general counsel that they worked with another firm that they know and get rid of the existing people. People will go in-house, and the company will want you to do things you don't think are quite right. Your job as an in-house attorney, by the way, is to basically help a business do things that could be suspect, not necessarily things that would be kosher, I guess is a good way to put it. And they will want you to kind of bend rules and things, and you won't, and I'll let you go because they want people to make things. Anyway, all these different things that happen. So what happens when I see resumes of people that are in law firms and go in-house, that the jobs typically, I would say like 80% of the time, they don't last more than a couple of years. So it's just because of so many things you can't control. You're also a cost center when you go in-house. So if your decision is that you want to go in-house, you have to keep in mind that you're probably going to have a decent period of time where probably going to, the odds of you losing your job are pretty good. That doesn't mean you will. That doesn't mean that I haven't seen people go in-house and make millions and millions of dollars, like when a company goes public or they get stock options. You can be very successful, but in most cases, when you go in-house, you're going to have a very difficult career, because not only is it difficult to get a job when you're in a law firm trying to go in-house, but it's even more difficult when you're in-house and you've lost your job trying to get another job. So I don't think there's any better practice setting than a law firm if you learn how to become very talented in a niche, and you can get your own business. I mean, if you go into trust and estates, you can always get a job and you can always get clients. It's not hard. If you go into family law, it's the same thing, or whatever. I mean, all these different practice areas that provide you stability. If you go to a law firm and you become like really good in some sort of niche, even if you don't get business as a family law attorney or trust estate attorney, you always get jobs. And I have a woman, it's absolutely amazing. She's in New York City in her late 60s and trust and estates attorney. And she's probably gotten like 10 plus interviews, and she goes into these interviews and just bombs them, but still gets job offers. And there's just so much demand for that right now. She has no business, bad personality, tons of employment stability. So law firms can provide a lot more employment stability than going in-house. Going in-house is very risky, and it's very difficult to get back into a law firm. Oh, sorry. Hey, Harrison, thank you for the webinar. What steps can I take to recover from mistakes or reputation I had as a junior, as the attorney tries to become more senior? Example, short bill hours, struggling to generate work. So I've lost the job as a junior attorney. Almost all attorneys at some point, like I was talking about in-house attorneys recently, almost everyone will get fired at least once. You learn your lessons and then move on. If you were short in billable hours because you weren't able to generate work. So different types of law firms operate different sorts of ways. So sometimes a law firm will have more work than they can handle and everyone will get work. Other times, in order to get work, you have to network with partners and things, and then you have to do good work for the partners you work for, and then you have to get them to give you work again in the future. So how do you fix that? I mean, you just go into a new firm and you do the best you can, or in your existing firm, you start doing everything you can to do the best possible work for the partners you work for, and to get more work, and to be actively seeking out work, and then when you do get work, trying to get more work from the partners that you work for. Sometimes you may have just done something horrible in your reputation. People no longer want to give you work. And if that happens, then then you need to move firms. But there's nothing wrong with that. That happens to a lot of attorneys. They make career mistakes. And if that happens to you, you just recover from it later. It's not that big of a deal. If anybody has any more questions too from this webinar, I'm answering things from last week, and I'll continue doing that. Let me just see. But yeah, so just I will continue answering questions from last week. But if anybody has any new questions, I'll answer those too. How did law firms view foreign trade? Attend trained attorneys to the U.S. LLMs for lateral hires. I hate this issue here because so many attorneys from overseas and things come to the US and they think if I get an LLM, I'm going to be able to be employable. And then they try to apply to big firms. No one hires them. Sometimes they get these like 1-year assignments with big firms or they're special. But if you come to the US and get an LLM, you can certainly get a job. You need to apply to firms in smaller markets, solo practitioners, very small firms in major markets, and in places that firms that aren't getting a lot of applications, and you can get a job. So any foreign trained attorney can get a job. You just need to apply to a lot of places. That means if you are in this example again, I'm just trying to help everyone here as much as I can. If you are in, let's say you're in California, so you don't apply to, first of all, you can apply to small firms and solo practitioners and stuff if you're in Los Angeles, but again, I like in California. So you don't do what everyone else is doing. You don't apply to all of the large firms and think you're going to get a job, because there's no reason for a large firm to hire you because they're getting applicants from people that went to top law schools, or not even that. I mean, it's just there's plenty of people in the US that don't need sponsorship, that they can hire, that aren't going to hire, that there's no reason for them to hire you because they're getting plenty of US applicants that they can measure. I'll talk to you about in a second. But what I can guarantee you is most people that get LLMs are not approaching firms in Fresno most of the time. But in California, even though there's 500,000 people in Fresno, and there's likely to be lots and lots of firms, I mean, hundreds, that could potentially hire you in Fresno or in San Bernardino or in Ventura or in Riverside or all these different places. So that people make that mistake, and even if you're a US attorney and didn't do well in law school, there's plenty of places that will hire you. I mean, there's thousands. So a US LLM can always get a position. It doesn't really matter. But my piece of advice to you, anybody that wants to get an LLM or thinks they're going to get an LLM, and I think this is an important question, you need to anybody that thinks they're going to succeed in an LLM, you're going to succeed like dramatically, like to an extent that's far beyond what you would ever get with an LLM if you go and get a JD. So you get a JD, you get into the best law school you can, you do as best as you can there, and your odds of getting a job in a major firm and all these things go up astronomically. Because having a US JD means you've gotten into the best law school you can. So law firms can evaluate you based on the prestige of your law school, and then you've done the best you can in the law school, meaning you've got the best grades you possibly can, so they can compare you to other people that have US JDs. An LLM is kind of meaningless because people go there and the grades don't mean anything. It's just you kind of show up and you pay $100,000, whatever it is, and you get an LLM. But if you get a JD, then they can compare you to all the other people that went to different law schools. They can compare you to, your grades. They have that to measure. And so law firms can measure you in that way. But LLMs are very dangerous because you can definitely get a job if you're applying to a lot of different, different areas of the state, wherever you're in. Plenty of people that will hire you. But at the same time, your odds are going to go up dramatically if you feel like you can, if you get a JD, because a JD, you're going to get evaluated based on your grades. You're going to get evaluated based on the quality of the law school you go to, so they can compare you to other people in addition to your LLM. How should you present being out of work for a long time, for example, 1 to 2 years for a disability, health issue, family issues, taking care of parent, are ready to get back to work? Well, you can go to there are plenty of people who will hire you. You just need to apply to enough places, and smaller firms and large firms, not just job openings. How do you talk about it? Well, you talk about it and you just basically say whatever happened. It's going to, you're going to be, anytime you're looking for a job, you're going to be competing against people that are employed. So it's going to make it more difficult for you because the law firms will have a choice. Do we hire someone that's been continually working in a law firm and is still working in a law firm, or do we hire someone that's been unemployed, not working for 2 years? So you've been unemployed, not working for 2 years. You're obviously, the law firm is going to favor the person that's similar skills in a practice area and that sort of thing. They're going to favor the person who's currently employed. You would too. So, and then if you talk about health issues, if you've had a bad health issue and you got sick or something, that unfortunately, I mean, I don't like this, but law firms are going to prefer someone that hasn't had health issues, because you want to hire someone healthy versus not healthy. I mean, that you're going to be able to depend on. I mean, it's just, this is how family issues, taking care of a parent, like, I don't know, this. So those are going to hurt you to some extent if you are applying against similar candidates that are looking for the same types of jobs. But that doesn't mean you can't get hired. I mean, you might have really good experience in some niche practice area, project finance or something, where there's not a lot of applicants, even from top law firms. You work at the top law firm and there's not enough people like you. But ultimately, the thing to remember is law firms are businesses. They need people to bill hours and do work. They will hire people if someone shows up that could do the work and has the skills and everything, and they can make money off that person, and that's the best applicant they have, they will hire you. So just keep in mind that this is for everybody. It's for L's, this is for people that get fired, whatever. Law firms are businesses and they need people to do the work. And all you need to do is find someone that needs the work you do. And if you do that, you're going to be you're going to be in, you'll find something. There's another question about doc review. Are temporary or contract attorney positions still out there? I'm thinking of doc review associate positions with the early 2010s. Yeah, there's always document review positions out there. So there are plenty of them. So if you want to do document review, you just need to contact a temporary agency and find those jobs. But again, I don't know why anybody with a law review would want to look at do document review. Why would you want to do that and look at documents and make a decision whether or not they're important or not? I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, you may like them. If you do, that's fine. But there are plenty of jobs for attorneys out there in different practice areas with plenty of people that need attorneys. So I don't really understand why you would do that, but it's up to you. This is a good question. I like this one. What are the differences between working and as an attorney in a rural versus an urban law firm? So in a rural law firm, the clients are typically going to be smaller. The clients are going to have, you're not going to be able to bill as much money to those clients. You'll be often, there's not a lot of attorneys out there competing for the same work. So you'll have a better opportunity of getting work because the clients don't have, because the matters typically, the clients aren't willing to pay as much money. You'll typically have a better lifestyle. In an urban area, you're going to be more respected for being an attorney versus in an urban area, there's just plenty of people like you. In a rural area, you're going to make less money most of the time, but have a better lifestyle. You may have actually more employment stability in a rural area because there's not a lot of other attorneys that law firms can hire. You'll have an easier chance of generating business because, again, there's fewer attorneys and you'll meet more people. You'll probably have a better life in a rural area. For the most part, you won't make as much money, but you'll have time to take your kids to school and all these sorts of things. One of the examples I love is there are all these law firms like in upstate New York, like really good firms like Hodgson Russ and Harder Seacrest and all these great firms. And they're great firms. I mean, they're really good firms. They will often do work for, they'll do work for local clients, maybe in the Rochester, they work for Kodak or whatever, or Xerox, I don't know. But the point is that there's all these attorneys that often will move there. Though maybe they're from New York State and they grew up in Syracuse or whatever, and they'll move to these, they'll work in large New York law firms where they're billing like these insane hours. And then they'll move to these firms where people have a good lifestyle where even Rochester is somewhat urban, but I'm just giving you an example. They'll move to these areas and they might make, instead of making, $300,000 a year, maybe they're making 150, but they have a good lifestyle. They're going home at night. They feel like they have more employment stability. People aren't working there till like 10 o'clock at night every night. They have houses. Their commute's not that bad. They have time for, it's just that they're happier. And so I think that working in rural areas are actually often like a much better career path for people. They're not gonna have health problems, or it's all this. I mean, if they're working too hard, gonna not gonna have better relationships with their significant others. I tell this example almost every week, but I'll tell it again. I was clerking in the city called Bay City, Michigan, in a post office, above a post office for a federal judge. And when I was young, this is when I was in my mid-20s, there was a group of young attorneys that were, first through fourth or fifth, first from me, third or fourth year attorneys, and that was like a local young attorneys group, and there were maybe 7 or 8 of us. It was kind of an urban area. It was like, Midland, Bay City, maybe some, but anyway, there were 7 or 8 of us, and I was clerking, so I was part of this group. Then 15, 20 years later, I remember just thinking, I wonder what these people are doing. I looked them all up, and there might have been 1 or 2 exceptions, but the majority of them, almost all of them, were at the firms that they'd been at when I was clerking. And they were young attorneys, and they were now partners there and everything. And one of them was head of the best firm there, Kendrick or whatever it was. But the point is that, they were all there, and they were all still at the same firms, and they were partners, and they had never left those firms. And so what does that mean? I mean, I guess what that means is that, all the people that I practiced law with when I started, the majority of them never were at the same firms. They went in house and did all these things, but these people had employment stability and they had careers. And so I think you can have a much better career when you're in an urban area, as opposed to urban area many times. Let's see if there's any more questions here. So if anybody has any more questions, please ask them now, because I think I may be, I don't know. Let me just see. Okay, good. So I think that's it. So thanks everybody for being on this webinar. I hope you got a lot out of the networking stuff that I did cover. I do think that networking is probably one of the absolute most important things you can do to advance your career, but to get business, to get jobs, all that sort of thing. Something that most people don't do, but people that are successful are very good at it. And it's something you can learn. The advice that I wrote about writing people down that staying in contact with them, is really the most powerful advice I can give you, because that's what people seem to do, that they make sure that they have a network, they stay in touch with people. And I like the question about LinkedIn. I think that's a very useful tool. Even if you invested, it's kind of funny, if you hired someone $500 a month to work in your LinkedIn account, I just wonder what kind of results that would give you. I mean, it seems like a very interesting thing to think about, or maybe taking courses in LinkedIn stuff could be helpful as well. Okay, well, thanks everybody. And I appreciate everyone being here today. And I hope you learned a lot, and I'll be back next week. Bye.